the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Italy? Whiskey? Ah, Italy, you could never look at my secret. Oh, no, suddenly, hello, Libby. Let's begin. Indeed.
All right, hello everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. I know this is an unusually late stream, and it's kind of a weird day for a fireside chat, but I am pleased to present Turd Flinging Monkey. He's one of the old school, like OG, sort of red pill / MGTOW / I don't know, anti-feminist commentator, whatever you want to call it. So welcome to the show, TFM.
God, you make me feel so old.
Well, it's in internet years, you are really old. I think,
That's true.
It goes way back.
I've seen him come,
right?
and I've seen him go.
Yeah. So when did you start doing this?
My first upload was in 2015.
Okay, so yeah, it wasn't actually because I was producing at HBR around that time, and I found this I don't know what you call it, but this corner of the internet in 2014 probably, and I got hooked, man.
Well, there was around Gamergate. That was when anti-feminism had its 15 minutes of fame.
Yeah. Yes, that's true. If you're talking about all of the sort of YouTubers that got on the bandwagon to make videos. That's true, but it was pretty, I don't know, it was pretty weak, most of it, in my opinion.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, I learned that the hard way. So when it comes to anything, when you're complaining about a problem, nobody has a problem with that. In fact, you can get a huge audience from both sides of the aisle as long as you're just complaining. As long as you're not offering a solution, as long as you're not trying to solve anything. Like the best example I could think of is, imagine, obviously Donald Trump's not president anymore, but back when he was president, if you called a far right person and a far left person and asked them if the country was on the right track or the wrong track, both of them would probably say the wrong track, but for entirely different reasons. And if you asked a person on the far left and the far right, do you think the system is working? They'll probably both say absolutely not, but for entirely different reasons. So as long as you're only complaining, everybody likes you. Everybody's projecting onto you, oh, this guy sees what I see. He's just like me. It's only when you start offering solutions, whoa, this guy's crazy.
Yeah.
So that's why most anti-feminism is very boilerplate, milk toast, safe, because it was just a trend at the time, and then when it wasn't cool anymore, it all went away.
Yeah, well, it mostly did. I mean, we still do it, but not. I think that from the beginning, and I think that I've always been trying to use what's going on to get people on board with the conversation and talking about it. This is why I do the fireside chats. Most of the time when I do a fireside chat, I bring on somebody who doesn't, they're not like you. They haven't been doing this a long time. They don't know a whole lot about it. I ask people on the left and the right to come on, conservatives as well as far leftists. And what usually happens is the leftists never come on. They don't want anything to do with me. They don't talk to me. They don't respond, or they, just say, hell no, you're a chud or whatever. But I do. Yeah, you know how it is. But I do get to talk to tradcons and just conservative types and people who are, sort of I guess moderates. And one of the things that's great is, at least this is what I take pleasure in, is I always manage to drop in a little bit of a perspective that they never considered, because I'm hoping that if we can get people on the same page, on certain core issues, like just ideas, we're talking ideas right now, then, you know, maybe those people can, like, first of all, talk about things accurately, because I do think that people in the conservative sphere, as well as the people in the feminist or leftist sphere, they have a really distorted view of what reality is. And I'm trying to get them on board with what I believe reality is. And it's actually a lot more effective on the more conservative-minded people, mainly because they're willing to talk to me. So,
Well, that sounds good. I once thought as you did. I think your naivety is adorable, by the way. Never lose that innocence. Don't become a jaded, cynical monkey like me. But so here's the thing. At the end of the day, it's not about facts. You know, are you familiar with David Hume, the philosopher?
Yeah, I am, and I agree.
Okay.
Actually, I don't think it's just about facts, but go
Well,
on.
so you can't derive an ought from an is. We could describe reality all day. We can all be on the same page regarding basic facts of reality. That doesn't necessarily mean we're going to arrive at the same conclusion, because everything is about subjective value. Everything. Like, we use something extremely obvious, like communism. Communism doesn't work. It's killed hundreds of millions of people. And like, I guess 100-ish, depending on how broad you want to apply it. Killed a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's a fair amount of humanity that has been killed, rivaled only by the deadliest diseases.
Yeah.
But anyway, the thing is at the end of the day, whether or not you consider that good or bad or worth it or acceptable is all due to subjective value. So I could point out that, well, you know, if you do this, it's going to result in this outcome and all these people are going to die. But they could just as easily turn around and say, well, under capitalism, all these people don't get free health care, and all these people, you know, people in third world countries are starving, and you know, they have little dissented stomachs, and it's so tragic, and it's all capitalism's fault. So yes, 100 million people die under my system, but under your system, 100 million people die. So
Yeah.
which way is right? And like, who lives, who dies, who decides? And ultimately, it always comes down to subjective value. So getting people on the left and the right to come together and agree on basic tenets of reality actually solves nothing, because it's all about subjective value. And unfortunately, there's no way, you cannot reason someone out of their values, because you weren't reasoned into your values. All you can do, the best you could do, the only way to stop the senseless back and forth, the destruction and the circle, just the death spiral, you have to basically mind your own business. And you see this, both sides want to do this, and it's really upsetting. Both sides. And in fact, if you want to throw in like a third side, because I don't believe the right and the left are like a dichotomy. I believe in what's called the political trichotomy. So there's actually two parts of the right. So there's the left, the progressive left, they believe in equality. But on the right, you have traditionalists or absolutists who believe in stability and tradition. And you have individualists who believe in freedom. And they're as far apart from each other as they are from the left. It's like a triangle kind of on its side.
I know about the trichotomy. Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, but the point is like, both the absolutists and the progressives, they both project their values as what's good for humanity. And this is a very human thing to do. We all assume that everybody is like us, and we all assume that what makes us happy, the type of society we would be happiest in, is the society that's best for everyone. And so we want to actualize the environment that we want to live in, and we universalize our values. We assume everybody is just like us, and everyone would be happier in the situation we would be happiest in. And anyone who disagrees with us or stands in our way is therefore evil. So to the progressives, they want to create a world of equality. And if you stand in their way in the name of tradition or freedom, well, you're a fascist, because you're standing in the way of equality, and you're evil. And, you know, you're not just wrong, you're evil. And you don't negotiate with evil. You don't try to reason with evil. You destroy evil. To the absolutist, to traditionalist, the absolutists, whatever you want to call them, they look at their traditions. They look at the stability. They want a stable society. They don't like things that are different. They don't like things that are changed, and that's why their big boogeyman, like to the left, it's the Nazis. To the absolutist traditionalist, it's degeneracy. It's the people who are degenerating society, that are attacking their traditions and their way of life and all this other stuff. And so they hate capitalism as much as they do communism, They hate freedom as much as they do equality, because both of them are antithetical to the traditional way of life. So, but you cannot convince a traditionalist or someone who believes that stability is the highest value of a society to embrace either equality or freedom, because both of those are destructive to the traditional way of life. You cannot convince a progressive to embrace freedom because they want equality. And like, I'm an individualist. I believe in freedom. You're not going to convince me that it would be better for me to just accept my role in some traditional, hierarchy based on heredity or something like that. I don't want anything to do with that. Nor do I want to live in some, dystopian equalist society where whatever, I'll take my chances in the woods type of thing. So at the end of the day, you have three groups of people with three different core values, and they will never agree, ever, 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 ever. So you have two choices. And unfortunately, this is like the tail of our politic. Both sides, both the left and the right, and when I mean the right, I mean mainly the traditional absolutist right. They're both trying to take over the culture, and they're both trying to indoctrinate the children of the other group. So you have the leftists trying to indoctrinate the children of the right with progressive values. This is where you get your drag queen story time. This is where you get your feminist indoctrination in college, and so on and so on. But then you have the right, when the second they have power, they want to bring, prayer in school and teach intelligent design and Veggie Tales or whatever. And they want to ban the video games and ban the animus, and they want to do all this stuff to try to basically advance their values. They want to stamp out degeneracy, and the left wants to stamp out racism and bigotry. And they do this by indoctrinating children, and they do this by declaring war on their opposites. And the only way that we end this is by minding our own business. Let people raise their families and live according to their values, as long as they leave you alone and respect your values as well. And until we understand, that's the only, if we don't embrace that, if we don't just embrace minding our own business, we're just going to have this constant back and forth where right now the pendulum is swinging, like the momentum is on the side of the left. The progressives have the wind at their backs. And so they're pushing. But there's going to be a counterculture. And then the right's going to be pushing. And it's just going to be back and forth forever. And people are going to die, and people are going to be suffering. And it doesn't have to be that way, because here's the magic is, if we just mind our own business, we can all be happy. Like, for example, in the Middle East right now, as we're talking, there is poverty and slavery, and women are being beaten, and it's so bad, it's so terrible. I have tears rolling down my cheek as I describe it. No one cares. No one actually cares, because it's on the other side of the world, and it's none of our business. There was a time when we kind of had the same attitude in our country and throughout the different states. Like, California could be California, Texas could be Texas. California didn't have to impose their values and turn Texas into California, and Texas didn't have to turn California into Texas. Every state could be their own thing. But now states' rights have been destroyed. Everything's been pushed up to the national level. And now it's all or nothing. We have to win the culture war. We have to capture the entire country. We have to force our values down their throat. And what this does, like, even if you have the momentum with you, you're going to basically make your opponents more and more radical until you lose the momentum, and then there's going to be a massive backlash, and it's going to go the other way. But then the right is going to overextend, and they're going to start pushing, and then the left is going to be victimized. They're going to be like, "Oh, we just want to be left alone, guys. No, we have to stamp you out because you're degenerates." And then they're going to push back, and it's forever. And all we have to do to stop is just let people live according to their values. Stop universalizing our values. Not everybody wants to live in a traditional hierarchy. Not everybody cares about the traditional ways of life. Nor does everybody want equality. Nor does everybody want freedom. Let people live according to their values. Let them raise their families and their children according to their values. Just like with religion. Like, you see people, like, if there's an Indian family that's raising their children Hindu and they believe in a six-armed elephant, it's none of your business. Doesn't mean you have to believe in the six-armed elephant, but let them raise their children in their traditions according to their values. It's none of your business. And I only have 3 rules. Don't hurt anyone, don't cost anyone money, and don't abuse children. And as long as you're minding those 3 rules, I have no beef. And
right.
That's the only way we get over this. Nothing else will solve the problem.
Yeah, so you said a lot there, but the only thing I wanted to say is I don't disagree with what you're saying. I guess for me, I don't see the political spectrum or trichotomy or I don't see it the way that a lot of other people do, because in my mind, what you consider to be the sort of conservative right, the traditionalist right, the people that are anti-degeneracy and, you know, pro-tradition and pro God and religion and all that, they're basically authoritarians, just like the progressives are. So to me, they're on the same side. Yeah, no, I think that most of them are. Like I've seen a couple of exceptions of people who are, you know, maybe they are really into tradition and all of that, but they're not necessarily interested in forcing it on people, in particular, either through like coercion of the mob or the community or the state itself. And so they'll just say, well, you know, I feel bad for you because you're probably going to burn in hell forever. I'll pray for your soul, but I'm not going to make you do that. I have seen that sometimes. I couldn't tell you exactly what the proportion is, but basically, to me, the only spectrum that matters is if you're authoritarian or if you're libertarian. And I say libertarian with a small L, not the party.
I know what you mean.
So,
I have a chart I could share with you that
there was
exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, to me, people who are authoritarian, who feel as though they need to use either the state or the tyranny of the majority to get people to do what they want and also to solve problems, are on the left. That's how I see it. That's leftism. I don't care if you because I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why.
Well,
I mean, there's
I know what you're going to say because I agree with you. I'm an individual.
Yeah, and ultimately the outcomes are what like the outcome is the same, whether it's someone that's forcing you at basically at gunpoint to accept that gender is a social construct, or someone forcing you at gunpoint to accept that the world is only 6,000 years old and that the devil put dinosaur bones in the earth to trick humans. And so I don't care where it comes from. All I care is, are you forcing this on me or not? And I think that that's really the only, and that's the thing that I try to get people to see, because I you know, and I think it has been, you know, mostly it's been pretty effective, but okay. I don't expect it to be first of all, it's not a solution. Second of all, you're right. For many people, facts don't matter, and they're just going to have their worldview. Or if they do change their mind, and this is what I've found, they never do it when you tell them. They always do it later, and it usually takes a while, and then they also take credit for it. So like, oh, I changed my mind on this thing, and I did it on my own. Now, the reason why I do still think it matters that we talk about it is that faction of people who hate each other. Yeah, that's the thing that I've seen it, but I came to that conclusion on my own. Then I saw that many years later, but that's what I believe. The bottom. So you can send me the link to that, and I'll share it. But
yeah, I don't.
But
I have it on my Google Drive. I mean, I could hold on. I'll put it on my my thing real quick. I'll send you let me upload it real quick, and then I'll.
Yeah, no problem. I'll just finish my point, because it gets to something deeper. Because I think when you're talking about political wings or political parties and, you know, state influence and collectivism versus individualism, to me, that's actually starting the story in the middle, because this comes down to gender. The gender dynamics are at the root of all of these problems, and the fact that the family is destroyed, that women and men do not get along on the whole, and that, you know, take on the whole as many different ways as you wish, because, you know, we have essentially sexually liberated women and given them all of the authority and none of the responsibility, and we've given men all of the responsibility and none of the authority. So we've thrown the balance off between men and women so much that the destruction of the nuclear family, which is all but complete, and add to that the fact that generations of children have, first of all, been raised without fathers. Second of all, have become single parents themselves. Divorce is through the roof. And on top of that, they have been educated in a system that indoctrinates them, right, to hate themselves, to become nihilistic and cynical about the future, to hate the country that they were born in, to have all kinds of criticisms, and to have an immensely distorted view of the sort of political landscape. So all of this abuse that happens to kids for generations has led to a very poorly educated, populace of people that don't know what the value of family is. They don't know how to raise kids. They don't know like anything outside of their immediate materialist desires, right? So, and then they turn around and criticize capitalism for it, which I think is absolutely incorrect, because that has not, like, being a materialist person has nothing to do with capitalism. And it just sort of further feeds into that beast of what I consider just nihilism. And I think that because that's what we're really up against is people who don't give a shit about their lives enough to get off their ass and do something, and instead they want to blame the system. They want to blame the state. They want to blame the commies. They want to blame the religious people. They want to blame God. But ultimately, they're just mad at their father for not being around, and they don't recognize that it's their mother's fault.
No, okay, you're not wrong with most of what you're saying, but really all this is the product of when America was founded on freedom. I mean, if you read the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, if you're familiar at all with Thomas Jefferson, but the problem is the founding fathers, that America died a long time ago, like in the 1800s.
Yeah, in during the yes, you're right, in the 1800s. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Those ideas don't matter. It's like the people now, right? That's what I'm saying.
It's not the people. Like, so if you understand the political trichotomy, you understand everything. Everything you're talking about, the destruction of the family, feminism, nihilism, consumerism, not educating people properly, not teaching critical thinking, teaching government dependence, all of that has to do with progressivism. It's all the entire point of progressivism is to make everyone more equal. So how do you make people, like, because you have smart people and stupid people, how do you make them equal? Well, you can't make the dumb people smarter. If it was that easy, they would just, no one chooses to be dumb. So it's not like you can fix that problem. So the only way to make people equal is to pull the smart people down by giving them a terrible education and not teaching them how to think. How do you make men and women equal? Well, I mean, you have sexual dimorphism, you have like brain differences, you have sexual role differences. How could you possibly bridge that gap? Well, you just cap men off at the knees and liberate women and let them LARP as men for a while. And, yeah, sure, you have women on all kinds of antidepressants, and then the fertility rate is gone. And also you have a welfare state you can't afford because you have no workers. And look, it doesn't work. I didn't say progressive. I'm not a progressive at all. I hate progressives, but from their perspective, it's just like every other utopian vision. All utopian visions always crash and burn, but they basically say, well, and honestly, this is going to go in a weird direction, but just come on a journey with me. If you're familiar with like Eastern philosophy, like Taoism or even like Buddhism and stuff like that, where it comes to the non-duality and the yin yang. So in many cases, when you try to manifest something, in the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu says that when you make something good, you create evil. When you create something beautiful, you also create that which is ugly. And so the attempt to create utopian ideals, whatever it is, when you try to improve the world, when you try to make it better using some utopian construct, you end up creating its opposite. And we could see this with communism specifically. The idea of communism is a moneyless, classless society where we all share everything. It's basically like a big loving family.
Yeah, it's John Lennon's Imagine.
Right, where mom and dad, dad brings home the bacon, mom keeps everything clean, the kids clean up, everybody loves each other, everybody takes care of each other. There's no money. You don't like give your son a bill when he, cleans his room or something, or he, eats your food. You take care of each other because you love each other. You're a big family. That's the ideal of communism. It's the family on a large scale, but then they throw in the wrench of, but everyone's also equal. So you can't have mother and father and child because that's a distinction. That's a hierarchy. So you have to have a family of equals where mom and dad and the children are all one system. And it sounds great. In fact, if you think about the Christian concept of heaven, where everyone's just sitting on a cloud playing their harp saying hallelujah for eternity, it's or if you think of like the Eloi from the Time Machine, where they're just kind of sitting on their idyllic beach just playing music and enjoying the sun, that's what communism was supposed to create. Now, what does it actually create in reality? It creates horrible authoritarian regimes that, throw people in gulags and mass graves, and everybody starves to death. Now, you might think, well, that wasn't real communism. But if you just follow it on paper, you'll see exactly how the ideal of this universal family manifests as authoritarian dictatorships and mass graves and starvation, because you have to get rid of private property. That's also why they want to get rid of the family. Families are a form of private property.
Right.
Like when you have animals mating and having offspring, the offspring will be protected by the parents. You don't see like random people. In fact, in the animal kingdom, other animals of the same species might eat the offspring of their own species if the parents aren't guarding them. So, I mean, this is just part of nature. But the whole point about utopianism is you're ignoring nature. You deny nature exists because you're pushing for this utopian vision. But
Right.
you abolish private property. You get rid of family. You get rid of the idea of owning anything, and you expect people to love each other and take care of each other. And then it just doesn't work because of basic human nature. Ironically, Karl Marx didn't invent this. In ancient China during the Warring States period, we had the same political trichotomy that we have now. You had Confucianism, and everyone knows who Confucius is. Confucianism was very built on tradition and stability, very much like the modern kind of traditional right. Then you had Taoism, which they were like the individualists who wanted to be left alone and wanted basically leave people alone, don't tell them what to do, don't try to control things, just go with the flow of nature. That was Taoism, very individualist, very pro-freedom. People say that Lao Tzu might have been the original libertarian. But then there was also what was called Moism, originated by a philosopher named Moti, who believed in universal love. And he believed in basically treating everyone the same. So you shouldn't love your family more than you do a stranger. You shouldn't mourn for people that you were close to more than you do some random person. So
Yeah.
Moti was Moti had a very utopian idea. And obviously, and this is during the Warring States period of China, where you had all these different countries killing each other all the time. And so he saw in a way to stop this through universal love. All we have to do is all love each other, and then we'll stop fighting all the time. And that sounds good. Of course, it didn't work. But that's the problem with utopian ideas. Now, what's interesting is during the Warring States period, Confucianism and Moism were the two schools that butted heads a lot. And Taoism was kind of just on the sidelines, just, they're mostly like hermits who just like going out into the woods and just wanting to be left alone and be one with the Tao and everything. What's interesting though is you carry that forward to the modern day. Confucianism kind of became a staple in Chinese culture, but then Taoism also became like a religion. And Moism went away. No one cares about Moism. They tried to bring back. Then then the thing about the communist revolution, like the CCP with Mao Zedong, is that only happened because the Japanese really messed China up in World War II. Like they just massacred the crap out of them.
Yeah, they created the conditions for people to essentially want Maoism.
Right. And then Mao ended up killing. He ended up during the Cultural Revolution. He ended up murdering or sending the Taoists to re-education camps. A lot of them fled to Taiwan or America. So it was pretty rough. But the thing is, what's interesting is you see in China the exact same split between different values. Like in America, in the West, we call them communists because we have the history of Karl Marx and the Bolsheviks. But in ancient China, they had the same conflict with the same groups pushing the same values in I think it was like 600 BC, over 2,000 years ago. So these values, this conflict is eternal. Even if Karl Marx never existed, we would still have this conflict. So, but again, at the same time, it just like it's wrong for any authoritarian to push their views. And you have like right-wing authoritarianism and left-wing authoritarianism, and they both believe they're right and everyone else is evil, and they feel justified in pushing their worldview on everyone. Anyone who stands in their way is evil and needs to be killed. And people who believe in freedom, they don't want anything to do with that. Like asking them to choose between left-wing authoritarianism and right-wing authoritarianism is like getting shot in one leg or getting shot in the other leg. Like I don't want to get shot in either leg. Like I don't have a favorite leg or anything. I just don't want to get shot at all. And so the answer, and this is the answer that Lao Tzu came to, is just to leave. Like he was a record keeper, but when he saw his nation declining, he just left. He just left his nation, left, and that's in the Taoists. They just, like they form monasteries, they form temples, and they just leave. They just separate themselves, and that's really all you really can do if you really think about it, because we don't have the numbers. I don't know. I'll show you how old I am. I was part of the Tea Party back in like 2009. So in the Tea Party, there was a survey that came out pretty early on where 70% of the Tea Party were basically boomers who wanted to protect their Medicare from Obamacare. They were worried that Obamacare was going to cut into their Medicare, and that's why they joined the Tea Party. Only 30% of the Tea Party actually cared about big government and freedom and liberty. And I didn't believe that at first, but I did notice old people holding up signs saying, "Keep your socialism off my Medicare." But then when the Tea Party fizzled out, it really kind of became apparent that it really was just being driven by boomers who were worried about their Medicare. And then there was a survey from Pew Research, and I reference this all the time, talking how 86% of men in the United States either believe that women deserve more rights or have the perfect amount of rights. Only 13% believe that women have too many rights. So you take so the right is about half the country. So 30% of half, or half of 30%, is 15. And then you take the 13% that believe that women have too many rights. That's basically who we're working with, about 15% of the country. And that's being very, very generous, probably a lot lower than that. About 15% of this country give the slightest crap about freedom and equanimity or anything having to do with justice or anything. They just 15%, which means we are vastly, vastly outnumbered. And we're also split. It's not just two sides, like 15% versus 85%. It's 50-50, but on our side, we have people who are just as authoritarian as the left. We also have the religious right, who have the same values as the progressives. They object to the communism, but if you put a Jesus face on it, they're all about it. So you have people on our own side who vote for politicians, and they outnumber us. The religious right, who have the same values as the progressives, and the absolutists, they outnumber us themselves. So I don't see a path where we advance the cause of liberty. I think that ship has sailed, hit an iceberg, and sank to the bottom of the ocean. All we can do at this point is what Lao Tzu did, which is just leave and just let the trash take itself out.
So what about, you said a lot there, but I don't disagree with what you're saying. So I used to live in Chicago, and I lived in Chicago up until October, and I moved to a small town in Virginia. And here I have been, because in Chicago, the thing is that, Chicago is very, very left, and it's also quite broken as far as the government is uber corrupt, and the people are, shattered. There are no fathers around. I lived in the hood, so, around the gangs and everything, and I've seen, girls get pregnant before they even develop, before they even hit puberty in a way that's visible. I've seen boys join gangs, get killed, go to prison, get hooked on drugs, etc. So I couldn't take it anymore.
I also grew up in Section 8 housing.
Yeah, I didn't live in, but I lived near section, basically in the same neighborhood. My point is, though, I had to get out of there. I went to a different area, and here I've been making friends and forming community with people. And so I've noticed that a lot of people where I am now, which is southwestern Virginia, they are a lot more interested in things like liberty, and they're like, it's mostly men. That was another thing I was going to get to, is sort of like the gender split on this, but yeah, there are people forming community. In particular, it's men forming. There seem to be men forming, what would you call it? Fraternity with other men. These guys are like ex-military, or they're currently in the military, former cops, hunters, guys that live off the grid, that kind of thing. And I have noticed that just from conversation I've had with them and other people, that it sort of falls in line with what you're saying, but people are forming community, where they're basically getting ready for, the people who I know, they're raising their own chickens. They got goats, they got rabbits. It's like they're, sort of like taking up that, what would you call it? Homesteading, right?
Yeah, I've looked into various options. So leaving the country and going, the problem is, where do you go? America was the place people went to when their country was falling to communism. They always came to America. And now that it's America, there's really no America 2 for us to go to. So I've come up with 5 solutions, 5 possible solutions. Now, one or more of them may not be available to you. So solution number 1, I call cultural no-go zones. So you see,
Yeah.
like with the Orthodox Jews in New York, how
Hmm.
the mayor, De Blasio, or it might have been Cuomo, I can't remember. They tried to basically lock down the Orthodox Jewish community, and the Jews basically just told them no, and they did whatever they wanted. And when they tried to shut them down, the Jews came out there and they beat the crap out of people. They beat the crap out of the cops, and there was like reporters there. They beat them up too. They like basically they're like, this is our neighborhood, and we're going to do whatever we want. And when you have enough people, and the thing is, like, Jews aren't, they're not like, like you could, the Muslim no-go zones where they commit like terrorism and have grooming gangs. They're peaceable people who run businesses and pay taxes, but they're not going to put up with your bull crap when you come in there and tell them how to live their life and try to push your stuff on them. They're going to show you, whose house you're in. And so the Orthodox Jews did that in New York City, of all places. You have the Amish, who have their own communities, and they straight up just ignore the law. There was an expose about the Amish showing how misogynistic the Amish are, because they basically pull girls out of school after middle school and marry them off.
Hmm.
And they don't care. And the thing is, it's like they did this expose as if they're trying to like gin up some type of controversy to try to like do something about the Amish. No one's going to do anything about the Amish because they have community. If you have community and you have numbers, and also more importantly, you're not like a
Exactly
threat to
right.
anyone. Yeah, so and
Yeah,
the
exactly
Amish
right.
and the Amish and the Jews are not a threat to anyone. They're not like gunning up for any kind of civil war or any kind of insurrection. They just want to be left alone. And more importantly, they're delightful people who pay taxes and create jobs. Like if you've ever been to an Amish market or you've gone to a Jewish deli or something like that, you're not like afraid for your life or anything. Like they're not bad
Mm-mm.
people. So you have all, so basically the government makes the rational choice to just let these people live according to their values and leave them alone. But you have to have the numbers in the community to do that. If you're like, a couple hundred people, it's not enough. You need like thousands, if not a million people. The more, the better. So if you have the ability to start or form or join some type of cultural no-go zone, like I talk to a lot of people, a lot of the absolutist right are Catholic. So Catholics used to have no-go zones. Like back when there was Catholic persecution, you had like little Italies, and you had like Irish Boston. You had basically Catholic immigrants who, because of persecution of Catholics, formed their own communities. Now, as that persecution went away, these communities broke apart. Well, maybe it might be time to, bring it all back and start forming communities again. If you care about your values, you care about your traditions, form a community, and there you go. So that's option 1, is form a community. Option 2, if that's not available to you, you could leave the country, but then where do you go? Like if you have the ability to, in going, moving to Asia or moving to some island, fantastic, but not everyone has that option. So another alternative to moving to another country is moving to a territory of the United States, or a
Like
state that's
Guam,
so,
or
Guam,
like
Virgin Islands, Puerto
Alaska.
Rico, or Alaska is the one I think makes the most sense.
Yeah, I wouldn't go to Puerto
Alaska,
Rico. It's a
I
shithole.
well,
I'm
there
from
there's
there.
well there's nice places in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, there
I
are, but it's like Jamaica. Like there are places in Puerto Rico you'll just disappear, and the economy is absolutely terrible, and the government is super corrupt. And the I think the Dems are planning on making it a state. So I wouldn't. I mean, look, but it's nice, like climate wise, and like I said, I'm from there, but I wouldn't live there. Most Puerto
well
Ricans don't want
the
to live in Puerto Rico.
well but okay, but here's the thing though. You have to understand, when America runs out of money,
Hmm.
they won't be able to project power. So living in a remote territory of the United States, that
Yeah.
distance is your friend, because the government,
Mm-hmm.
for them to do anything about you, they're going to have to expend resources to come to you. And if you don't make it worth their while to come to you, they're probably willing to like let a lot of things slide that they wouldn't let slide if you were in like Texas or Florida, because you're right there. It's very easy for them to reach out and touch you. Now, I think Alaska makes the most sense, because in Alaska, you have a very low population. You have a lot of land. It's twice the size of Texas. You have a lot of natural resources, and there's also military assets already there. You already have oil. You have there's farmland. It's not all like dog sleds and ice. Like if you go to
Mm-hmm.
southern Alaska, it's actually really nice. So Alaska makes a lot of sense to me. And the biggest thing is Alaska is very defensible because of their climate and their mountains, and there's only very few places to actually, if you want to land troops in Alaska, you can only do it in a couple places. So unlike somewhere like an island that you can basically attack from all sides and there's very little to do, there's plenty of land, plenty of resources, very few people. Despite them giving people $1,000 a year to live there, the population has been going down. Whereas you look at
Mm-hmm.
Texas and Florida, the population has been exploding, but it's all people from California, New York running there to turn it blue.
Yeah.
So Alaska makes the most sense to me. That's where I'm kind of looking at myself. But let's say that doesn't work for you for whatever reason. So option number 3 is to, if you like, let's say you have to live in the city. Your job is there, your family's there. You simply can't leave the city, which is the worst place to be. Here's something you can do in your own life if you have to live in the city to basically limit your risk as much as possible. Downsize, minimize, and then convert a van or SUV into like a car, like a house car. There's plenty of
Like a
videos of people. In
Winnebago.
fact, an RV or Winnebago, it's really hard to park because it's so big. But if you convert a truck or an SUV or a van into like a little house, you
Yeah.
can live in it and you can park anywhere. And the thing is, in California, the cost of living is so high that people who make good money, basically they convert a van and just sleep in the van because they can't afford to actually buy a place to live because of the cost of living in California. So there's been these cottage industries, and entire companies have been stood up to make it easier for people to live out of their car. So now you have like these like things like these inverters and these solar cells and all kinds of companies that actually make it easier than ever for you to basically live out of your car, not because they're poor, but because the cost of living is so high. So if the benefit of that is if you live in a converted van or SUV, you can go to a gym to shower, you can go to a library or a McDonald's or a Starbucks to like use the internet, and you can charge your devices using your car's engine. Like as you're driving around, you're recharging this battery that you can then recharge your devices from, in addition to having solar. So you have plenty of everything you need. But if things start to look bad in the city, you can just drive away. Whereas if you live in the city, like in an apartment, you're gonna not want to just leave and abandon everything because all your stuff is there. So you're gonna want to like kind of wait and hope it's not, it's like the big one. Hope this isn't the big one. But then what if it is the big one? Well, now you're screwed. And after 72 hours, you're basically trapped in the city and you're not getting out unless you basically leave on foot, which is extremely dangerous. But if you
Mm-hmm.
have all your stuff in your car already, you can just drive away and be 100 miles away. And if it turns out it's nothing, you can always turn around and come back. So you have that peace of mind of living in a city, which is very dangerous when times are risky and shit's about to hit the fan. But if you have that mobility that you can get out of there at the first sign of trouble, and if it's a false alarm, it's a false alarm. You can always turn around. But if it's not a false alarm, you're 100 miles away, and that could make the difference between life and death. So that's another option. Then
Yeah.
you can also go off grid, get a cabin, build a homestead. You just live out in the woods, that kind of stuff. You can live, if you can live in the desert in an earthship house, you can live in the woods in a cabin. You can do all kinds of things to essentially disappear. And when things get rough, the government, and if there's going to be any kind of violence or any kind of anything, there's a cost benefit to how much they're going to expend versus what they're expecting to get. So invading a city and occupying it and enslaving the population, that's a very high risk but high reward play, because if you capture the whole city, you get thousands of people. But
Mm-hmm.
scouring,
Millions.
you get millions, possibly hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. But scouring the woods for a couple dozen people who can like disappear. You could have like a bug out location. You could be chilling in a ghillie suit in a tree and they'll never find you. So
Mm-hmm.
like it's just not worth it for them to even bother looking for you. So you might be able to basically just simply by disappearing into the woods, basically nope out of anything that happens, and then letting it all just kind of work itself out. You know, enjoy
Mm-hmm.
that communist purge, everyone. I'm going to be in the woods fishing and being one with nature. Let me know how that goes. And then, you wait a couple decades. There's been a revolution and everyone's dead and everyone's picking up the pieces. And then you kind of stroll back into town and you just been in the woods for the last 10 years and you just completely avoided all that bull crap. Now that's a risky play because your only defense is basically them being too lazy to find you or not knowing you're there, which isn't really a defense at all. Like you're basically counting on their ignorance. It's like if you live in a sketchy neighborhood, hiding your stuff under the floorboard or putting it in a book or hiding it like in an empty container. You're basically counting on them not knowing it's there. Let's say everyone knows in the neighborhood to hide things in containers or to hide things under the sink or to hide things in the floorboards. If everybody's doing it, then they're going to check those things and then that it won't offer any benefit.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's yeah, and then so those are no, some of those options may be more feasible for you, but the worst thing to do, the absolute worst thing to do is to just have this attitude of, well, we'll get them in 2024. We just got to make the case. We got to fight the culture war. We got to just, maybe we'll point out the hypocrisy of the left another million times and it'll totally work. We're going to keep pointing out the hypocrisy of the left on social media and fight the censorship. It's like we don't have time for that. Like it doesn't work. It hasn't worked. It won't work. Time is short, resources are short. Like, what are you doing to save yourself and those you love from what's going to happen? I don't know when. I don't know if it's 5 years, 10 years, but it's going to happen. You kind of already see things kind of moving into place. It's not going to be pretty, and I don't want to be here for it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's my message. Like, there was a time when the message was simple: just, hey, don't get married. Don't watch out for Me Too. That's a pretty simple message. Pretty maintaining your freedom was a pretty easy decision. Just avoid certain situations, avoid certain institutions, and your freedom was pretty much in the bag. And things are not that simple anymore because now there's
Yeah.
bigger things happening. If you want to stay free going forward, avoiding Me Too, avoiding feminism, that is not enough.
No. It's like by the time we got involved with this conversation, by the time we started talking about, because I think that what we're experiencing with what's happening on the state level and with the culture war, etc., is basically a consequence of the state of men and women, basically. And I think it is. But the problem is that we started talking about this when everything was already, like, the machine was already going for a long time. So it's like catching it, I don't want to say towards the end, because like I don't know, how much time we have or what have you, but we're essentially, the dam is breaking, and we started, even though we knew what was causing it is just that, the issue with, mostly it's the issue with women, but more, I guess, broadly, the issue between men and women is how we got here. I believe that the reason, I think that what we're experiencing, when we talk about these ideas of communism or whatever we want to call it, essentially the idea of equality and sharing, I think that's a female idea. And I think that is it is an absolutely female idea, because I think it's in women's nature to want that, and it's in men's nature in general to sort of revert to more hierarchical thinking in terms of how we should organize our lives, and that is how the family plays out. Because if you it's one thing that I will you do. Okay, well, let me, because I know that there's a lot of men that don't follow that, but that's because in my mind it's a lack of masculinity. It's not a problem with men per se, because I think the average person today wants to be taken care of, but 200 years ago that probably wasn't the case, because first of all, you couldn't count on anyone to do that. Second of all, men were measured by that, and it was probably honored and respected, in particular by other men. But I think that the reason, basically what I believe is the reason why there are two wings is because there are two genders, and we have fallen far to the feminine side of that, and that includes men. Our testosterone levels have been going down. You know, there have been the birth rates are lower, dating is shit. And so all of the problems with dating and relationships and marriage and family is how I think that it is the root problem of how we got here. Oh, and also, well, you know what? First, you can say something to that, but I do want to say something to something that you said on the Terrence Pop stream that I actually agree with, that you might be surprised by, because we're like MRAs, but we're not like the kind of MRAs that you were talking about on the stream. So, but first of all, what do you think about that idea that this essentially what we're dealing with is feminization of society? That's why there's this obsession with equality and fairness and all of this, and flattening hierarchies, etc.
You're right, but I would use different words to describe it. So I've been getting into more, like, again, Eastern philosophy. I highly recommend it, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But in the yin yang, you know, yang is the male, yang is the masculine concept.
Yes.
But yang isn't men. Yang,
no,
it's not masculinity either. Yang is energy. Yang is creation. Yang is, you know, it's basically, we associate it with the man. We associate it with masculinity, but it's not like all the problems women.
No. That's not what I'm saying, because I'm
not saying you're saying that. I'm just saying,
okay.
When you use the words, well, it's because of feminization, you're putting a gendered label on it. A better way to say it, and it'll actually make you sound more mysterious and wise. You talk about the balance of yin and yang has been disrupted. Yo, we are too, basically the world has gone too far to the yin. We become too passive. We become too effeminate. We become too, caring and nurturing. We want to be taken care of, and all the things. Like, it's not just a matter of women. It's a matter of weakness. So women. Why do women want to be taken care of? Because they have to be. Women are very vulnerable in nature. This goes all the way back to reproduction. Because women, human women are mammals, they carry their young inside of them. And so they require extra calories, and they're slow. They're slow. Their feet are swollen. They're cranky. You know, like, they're not going to be outrunning any predators when they're carrying a baby in their womb. So they have been hardwired by evolution to seek out and require a male's protection. And so women have always been the weaker gender. They've required men to protect them. And there's been an arrangement where the women will submit to the man in exchange for that investment from the man. And, you know, that was patriarchy. Now, contrary to what feminism believes, patriarchy is not androcentric. It's balanced. What's funny is, I don't know if you caught this part, or it might have been in a different stream where I mentioned this. So a lot of MRAs made videos about how Islam is actually feminist. Like, I remember Karen Strawn did a video about this, talking about how men are.
We've talked about it.
Right. So in Islam, men are required to take care of women, to defer to women, to provide for women. And the point being that Islam is not as pro-man, anti-feminist as you think it is, because it requires the men to be responsible for the women. What's funny, though, is MGTOW, as well as MGTOW, don't like that. They don't like the way that the men are responsible for the women. The feminists hate Islam because they don't like having authority over women. But the funny thing is, that's what patriarchy is. Patriarchy. They kind of
they kind of like it, though. I don't mean like the way in which. No, I know what you're saying, but it's like triple layered. On the one hand, they will criticize Islam because they think it's misogynistic. On the other hand, they find utility in Islam because it helps them achieve their goals against the real enemies, which are basically Western cultures, who they really hate. But on the final hand, though, feminists by and large do want to be, they want to be with a man who will dominate them. They actually do want to be dominated, like psychologically.
I think that's a little bit overblown. I'm not saying you're wrong. I know rape is a very common fantasy, but I'm saying
it is, but that's not what I'm saying. I think that if a man stands up to a feminist, they will almost always back down and submit. And I know that I have seen it countless times. It's totally anecdotal. I can't prove it 100%, but I do think there's a part of their psyche that they're always into bondage and shit.
When there's no white knights to do their bidding, yeah, women will always basically submit to the man, because then at the end of the day, they know that a man is 3 times stronger than her and can kill her with his bare hands.
And feminists are disgusted at white knights. Again, they find them useful. White knights are useful, but they're not attracted to them. They find them disgusting.
The point I was trying to make was MRAs and feminists both criticize Islam for different reasons, because in Islam, the women are under the male's authority, but the men are also responsible for the women. That is the literal definition of patriarchy. And so it's not an androcentric system that oppresses women. It's a balanced system where the men are responsible for the women and the women submit to the men's authority. And that is, going back, again, I'm just going to use yin and yang to try to not that I care. I just think that we live in a society.
Do you think this is a tactical thing when you say we should use the yin yang instead of the feminine masculine thing?
It's not a tactical thing, but if you're going to use a word that's going to, when I say trigger, I don't mean trigger someone on Twitter to report you, but I'm saying it's going to cause the conversation to go off topic. If you have to constantly define your terms to avoid going down rabbit holes, it's better to use a different word to accomplish the same point and to communicate the same idea more efficiently, and to avoid those rabbit holes and those emotional reactions. Not because I'm trying to accomplish any kind of goal, because I'm trying to facilitate communication efficiently. So, we got, when I brought up Islam, we went down this strange rabbit hole about whether women find white knights sexy and if they have rape fantasies. Now, we could have just gone down that rabbit hole for an hour, and that had nothing to do with the actual point I was trying to make. So my point, though, is, with yin yang, the balance, when they're in balance, that is the way of nature. And that's when things work the best. And that's how humanity evolved. Doesn't mean we can't improve, but we have to improve relative to our environment. That's how evolution works. We improve relative to our environment. Now, humans are unique in the way that they can actually create they can affect their environment the way other animals can't. If you're an animal and you migrate to a certain environment and it gets too cold, hopefully your descendants get thicker fur. Otherwise, you got to leave or you're going to die. Whereas humans, we can build things like air conditioning and central heating, and we can live in environments that really aren't suited to our biology. But because we have the ability to affect our environment, we can do that. So when we respect nature and we respect our environment, and we work with it, we can thrive. But the real problem with progressivism, specifically in feminism as a subset of progressivism, is that it ignores nature and it just tries to impose an idealistic view of equality on the world, regardless of the consequences. And the consequences are extremely dire, and no one's actually happy with the situation. But they can't admit, just like someone, it's like someone who's religious being confronted with undeniable proof. Imagine some cultist who's been hoodwinked by some cult, and you show him proof that the cult leader that he's believed in was a fraud. He's not gonna want to believe it, because he has that sunk cost fallacy. He feels stupid. It's just it is what it is.
Yeah, people don't want to admit that they're wrong. It's really hard for them. Yeah.
I mean, I guess my message, first of all, there's no political path where anything, we can't accomplish anything good. We don't have the number. We simply don't have the numbers. 2020 basically buried that, the whole idea of we're going to win the culture war. That's gone. As far as I'm concerned, there is no political path forward. But I'm going to give you a little bit of hope, because a lot of people accuse me of being black-pilled and I'm draining their hope and their everything. Let me give you a little bit of hope. So right now we don't have the numbers at all. We're outnumbered probably 4 or 5 to 1. So at this point, there's no path where we win. But I'm going to use an example from ancient history. When Emperor Hadrian of the Roman Empire went to Judea and just massacred the Jews, The Jews never came back and defeated the Romans. They got completely destroyed. The survivors basically fled the Judean peninsula, and they just kind of, went wherever they could. At no point did they come back and fight the Romans and take back their country. At no point. They were gone. There were pockets of them that existed here and there. For the most part, they were completely wiped out, and they basically had to live in little villages all throughout the known world. And until like 2,000 years later, they didn't defeat the Romans. They didn't defeat the Byzantines. They didn't defeat the Ottomans. They basically had to outlast 4 different empires until they got their land back. It took 2,000 years and 4 empires. The Jews literally just not dying. They just didn't die for so long. They eventually took back their country. But it took 2,000 years, and they didn't fight. They didn't fight for it. They just negotiated for it after 2,000 years, after the empire that kicked their ass was long gone. And so we don't have the numbers to defeat the progressives. The progressives have all the numbers. In fact, democracy was a horrible mistake. Because there's always more losers than winners. There's always more takers than makers. So once you have universal suffrage, you're pretty much done. You can kiss freedom goodbye. That's how that goes. So hopefully we learn from that mistake. But there's no way for us to reform the system from within. But what we can do is not die long enough. If we don't die long enough, because here's the good news about communism specifically, it doesn't work. And no one kills more communists than communists do. If you look at Pinochet, Pinochet killed like a couple thousand commies. That's nothing. Look at all the commies that Stalin killed. He killed 20 million people. His own people. 20 million. Mao killed 60 million. So you look at Pinochet, he killed a couple thousand compared to 20 or 60 million communists. So the best way to get rid of communists is just let it burn itself out. And it's interesting. You look at the Cubans. Like if you remember in 2020, there was all these articles talking about how the Cubans were traitors to the Hispanics because they were voting for Trump, and they weren't embracing communism because they lived through it. And most of the people I talk to, people who are very anti-communist, it's because either they're from a country or their grandparents fled a country that was overtaken by communism. Essentially, unfortunately, the promise of free stuff is so enticing that the only antidote to communism is to live through it. It's like getting a disease and then having antibodies. Now, eventually, after a couple generations, what free stuff you say? Tell me more. But for at least for that moment in time, the people who lived through communism are like, wow, that was a really bad idea. Let's never do that again. And that lasts for a couple generations. So that's the good news is if we do like what the Jews did under the Romans, just don't die, just live, hide out, don't die. Communism will burn itself out as it always has and always will because it doesn't work. It cannot work. The food and communism are like oil and water. They just hate each other. So all we have to do is not die. And then the commies will, and I'll explain exactly how this works. It's the same time. So they have a welfare state. The welfare state, they eventually run out of other people's money and they start using printed money. We're already doing that. We're already using printed money. So eventually, now they're kind of suppressing the inflation by keeping the economy suppressed. But eventually, once all this money hits the market, there's going to be inflation. When the inflation hits basic goods and services, not just asset inflation like the stock market and Bitcoin. I'm talking like the things you need to survive. When the prices are going up higher than your wages, the people are going to do what they always do. They're going to cry to the government for price controls, which are going to create shortages and famine. And then the government has a choice to make. Now, Venezuela couldn't make this choice because if they did, America would have intervened. But the choice is, do you just let the system collapse like Venezuela, or do you enslave your people and make them work at gunpoint, which is what Stalin did? Now, again, the only reason why Venezuela didn't make that choice is because America would have done something if the Venezuelan government started enslaving its people. But when America goes down that road and they have price controls and famine and people are dying, they can't admit they were wrong. And also what Mao did, do you know what? The one-child policy was a result of the famine.
Yeah.
The Chinese couldn't admit, hey, communism creates food shortages. So they just, we have too many people. We got to stop having babies. So it's just communism and food just hate each other. So all we have to do is not die, whether that's a cultural no-go zone, whether that's living off grid, whether that's going to Alaska, whether that's anything. You just disappear and you let communism burn itself out, and tens of millions of people will starve to death. And that's very sad. I wish it wasn't so. I did my level best to warn them and give them every opportunity to not go down this path, but they called me a misogynist and kicked me off of every platform known to man. And so, fuck them. And so after they starve to death, maybe, knock on wood, fingers crossed, thoughts and prayers, maybe we won't be outnumbered anymore. Maybe the people who love freedom won't be outnumbered 5-1 after the herd has culled itself.
Well, it's like what we were saying on the show, you know, if things are going to change, we're going to have to experience a whole lot of suffering first before people wake up to it. I think that these things are a product of, like, it's irony, because we make, you know, the world or our country so comfortable and decadent and, you know, so full of excess that people take it for granted, immediately forget how fragile it all is, and then they start throwing it away with ideas like this. I think that and I've always said this, I think that for ideologies like feminism are just aspects of, you know, communism, right? It's just a product of that. It's like they tried to bring communism to the United States many years ago. Americans didn't want anything to do with it, so they just repackaged it as women's suffrage. And all of a sudden, because we love the women's, we got on board and everything else came with it.
But honestly, again, you could trace it back to other things. It didn't. If Marx was never born, if communism didn't exist,
it would have existed in some form. It would be called something else, because there's always been.
Look, it's really simple. Look, here's the thing. I use this. Here's a good analogy, a good thought experiment. As long as children, when they lose a board game against an adult, scream, "That's not fair, you cheated, this game sucks," and flip the table, as long as that's human nature, there will always be communism.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. But I think it comes communism doesn't manifest in countries where everyone is like trying to get by and they're all working hard. It comes when everything is doing well and we have like a lot of resources, and that's when people start trying it because they figure we got everything. Now we're going to like try to share it with everyone. Right?
No, not really. It manifests when it's allowed to manifest. So if you want to trace back the origin of progressivism in the West, it actually started with things that you wouldn't object to. So ultimately, you go back to feminism started as progressivism, which started as the social gospel movement, which started in the wake of the Civil War due to the mistreatment of workers, which was caused by the Industrial Revolution, which was caused by, you can go all the way back. And ultimately, the philosophers which inspired the social gospel movement, the progressive movement, were the egalitarian philosophers, which were inspired by the utilitarian philosophers, who ultimately came down to basically the Protestant Reformation. When the Roman Catholic Church lost control of the European culture, that's when all these new ideas, and the thing is, that's where without that we wouldn't have had the Enlightenment. So the Enlightenment, when it came to science,
it's a product of the Enlightenment,
right? But that doesn't make it a bad thing. It just, again, it's all about
it comes with it,
duality, right? So as I said earlier, when you create good and you create bad together, they go together. So the Enlightenment created separate church and state. It created freedom. Like, we're individualists, we value freedom, but when the Roman Catholic Church lost control of Western civilization, essentially, it created the seeds of both egalitarianism, and it also created libertarianism. So that, again, so you had this. It's not bad. I don't hate the communists. I just want them to leave me alone. But unfortunately, and this is true of both sides, they see themselves, it's all projection. They see themselves as the good guys, and they see anyone with different values as evil, and they tell themselves whatever they have to justify whatever they have to try to build their utopia. And unfortunately, they outnumber us and we can't win. So all we can do is let them try communism again. It hasn't worked. It won't work. But hey, you're not going to listen to me. So go for it. And then they'll
Yeah.
go for it. And then they'll starve to death. And then we don't even have to say, I told you so, because they'll be dead. And then we can just come back in. And the good news is, like think about, I had this thought experiment, like a daydream, if you will. Imagine you had superpowers, like you were Superman and there was no kryptonite. You were basically invincible. And you can basically force everyone to do whatever you wanted. You could just basically be a one-man world dictator because you were stronger than any military. Now, you could make everybody submit to you and do what you want and all this other stuff, but they would hate you. Everyone would hate you. Even the people who believed in what you were trying to build would hate you because of what you were doing. And sure, you would save people's lives, but they wouldn't thank you for it. They would hate you for it. They would hate you for saying, unfortunately, the only thing you can do is let people suffer the natural consequences of their bad decisions. And the good news is when you allow them to suffer, they learn their lesson. When people suffer through communism, when they're fleeing for their lives after being starved to death or after their loved ones are being sent to the gulag, they understand the value of freedom. They teach their children to understand the value of freedom. And will that stick forever? Absolutely not. But that's unfortunately the story of history. It just constantly repeats itself. So we don't need to stop anything. We have to accept that this is just part of the cycle of civilization. We're at the decline stage, and it's okay to be in the decline stage. In fact, if you study history, you look at when nations were in decline, you had great men who were trying to fight bravely and keep their civilization going a little bit longer. The other men who basically kept the light, brightly burning in the darkness. And those people, they were more impactful. Like no one remembers the Roman emperors and the Roman heroes during the peaceful times when nothing happened. People remember the heroes when the things got bad. The people who basically saved them or built something. And so, we live in what the Chinese call interesting times. And and it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. We have to kind of embrace that we can't go back in time. We can't turn this around. But nature is on our side. Communism is a self-correcting problem. And so we don't need to fight this battle. We don't need to lament that we can't fight this battle. We just have to not die long enough, and nature will fight this battle for us, because starvation is an extremely effective weapon against communism, and we're not the ones wielding that weapon. The communists themselves do. So that's my message is actually one of hope. But what I see people doing is they want to keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. They want to keep fighting the culture war. They want to keep owning the libs on Twitter. They want to keep, making response videos to feminists as if that's going to do anything. But now, if you want to do that, if you genuinely enjoy doing that, keep doing that. But while you're doing that, you might want to consider joining a community, converting a van into. It's never been easier. Things are cheap. Information is abundant. Just take care of yourself and don't die. If you love freedom, if you love America, if you love the values that built America, don't die. Because if we don't die long enough, maybe we won't be the minority in the future. Maybe we can rebuild America again. But if we die, then it's truly over. America is its people. All nations, lines on a map don't matter. Cities can be rebuilt. Land can be reconquered. The people are what matter. So if you love freedom and you love America, you are America. So don't die. Keep that light burning, and let the communists starve to death. And we'll come back. We'll come back and we'll rebuild, and it'll be great. And then hopefully we learn our lesson, and then we can have that conversation with people like, "Hey guys, while we're rebuilding the country, you think we should have universal suffrage?" We're like, "No, not no,
No, we
never
gotta
did."
have that Starship Troopers set up. We make
Yeah,
people who they gotta earn their vote. They gotta serve or something,
yeah.
So that
Well,
they
yeah. I'm just saying, that's a bridge we'll cross when we get there. But
sure.
right now we're in a very limited window where things are getting bad, but they're not intolerably bad. And unfortunately, most people, until things become intolerably bad, they don't do anything. And if you have that attitude, you're probably going to die. So if you love freedom and you love America, I need you to not go back to sleep. Don't trust the plan. don't get them in 2024. You need to like turn that crap off, and you need to. I'm not saying don't get involved. I'm telling you to like. I'm trying to save you. I'm trying to get you to get motivated to not die. I mean you should be motivated to not die. That should be pretty high on your priority list. So I've given you 5 options to think about how you can possibly not die. If you have a family, figure out like which one works for you and your family. Save yourself, save your loved ones. And that's all I want you. That's all I want you to do. I'm not asking you to listen to what I have to say regarding women's voting or anything. I'm just saying if you love freedom, you're America, and I don't want you to die. The map, the country, I don't care. I care about you. Don't die. So whatever you have to do to not die. But I see a lot of people, they're doing really stupid things. Like they're getting ready for a civil war that they have no chance of winning. You simply you're vastly outnumbered. I can't even overemphasize what a massacre. First of all, after the first Civil War, the government instituted, I think, the 14th Amendment, which basically stripped the states of their power. The states don't have the ability. So the states can't do anything to stop the federal government. And the National Guard and all these other branches of the military, they answer to the government. They answer to who pays them, and the states don't pay them. So like there's no path where you fight the government and don't lose. All you're counting on is the military and the police breaking ranks and joining you. That's your only hope, is that there's basically a coup from within the military. Now, I want you to look at what happened in 2020. I want you to look at what happened, or go look at any time in history. That doesn't happen. When the Americans were interning Japanese Americans in concentration camps, that was clearly unconstitutional. And yet there was no breaking of ranks in the military. People weren't saying, I refuse to follow that order. After World War I, there were vets who were given bonds during the Depression who needed money, and they were camped out in front of the National Mall to protest. These were World War I vets. The army was sent in to break up the camps and ended up killing some of them. Not all of them, but killed a fair amount of them. And these were active duty military killing World War I veterans who were protesting bad pay. So at no point in the history of the United States has the military done what you think they're going to do for you for no reason. And do you think the American military today is more patriotic than it was back then? And also, like they're also actively purging people who have radical ties from the military. So they can track everything. So all these people in the military and the police who are right-wing voters, or who share your values, or who might be in touch with or go to church with, they're probably going to get kicked out of the military by the time things pop off. And so the left knows exactly what they're doing. There will not be a split. The military is not going to break off and turn on itself. You're literally banking everything on something which will not happen. And so I'm begging you, don't go down that road. I've given you 5 options that will work. Do not go down there's going to be a civil war. God is with us. You are going to die. And then America's dead. If you die, America's dead forever.
All right, I got some super chats. I'm gonna read through really quick. I appreciate the rant there. Rico Champagne gave us $2, and I think he said simp, but for some reason, I hope he said that. For some reason, that super chat disappeared from my list, so there might be YouTube shenanigans going on. There's not much I can do about that. Mr. Roboto, and if I got that wrong, Rico Champagne, just tag me in a comment and tell me what you actually said. But I appreciate the super chat. Mr. Roboto gave us $2 and said, Brian, is this an advocating of the purge? You mean like the movies? I never saw them. Thank you for the super chat, though. Appreciate it. DJ Yasi gives us $10 Australian and says, TFM, point is relationship between sexes don't matter since a lot of absolutist people on the right that vote for the left. I think he's saying that there are a lot. They've strong families, but it didn't stop them from embracing progressivism. Yes, we were conned a long time ago.
There is one thing. Nobody alive today, including the boomers, is responsible for this.
Yeah.
the fix was in before any of us were even born. When you're talking about something like you see like what happened in Venezuela, you saw that entire country crap the bed in 20 years. But when it comes to feminism, it takes about 100 years. And the problem is because the human lifespan is what it is, the people at the beginning get to reap the benefit of voting for someone that's going to screw over further generations. But by the time the generations feel the pain of what they're voting for, they're already dead. And there's really no way to prevent that from happening. Because if I offered you, if I said, like, I have a time machine where you can rob the future, you can go into the future and you could steal people's money and come back in the past and have free money. Almost everyone would do that. Like, yeah, I don't care. Yeah, I'm going to rob like people 100 years from now. If I said you could basically get a machine and rob people in 100 years, almost no one would object to that because they're going to be dead by the time the people who they rob from are affected. So it's just basically money from heaven. They don't care. Now, then, of course, in 100 years, these portals open and hands come from nowhere and steal everyone's money, and no one knows what's going on because this time machine. This is a stupid thought experiment, but the point is that's what these generations did. These generations who voted for all this feel good pandering stuff to buy votes and to get elected and to get power, they knew that they were not going to suffer the consequence, and quite the opposite. They were richly rewarded for what they did. And then by the time the pain is felt, they're all dead. And we're basically the inheritors. We inherited the bill of what our forefathers did to basically live it up at our expense. And now they're dead. We can't do anything about it. So but so I don't hate or blame anyone alive for what's happening. And I don't even hate the communists. Like I don't like the fact I don't want to see them starve to death, but I understand there's really no other way. And it's like I want you to imagine you have a brother that you love. Your brother, you love him, but he's addicted to drugs and he wants to live at your house. You let him live at your house for a while because he's homeless, and he starts stealing from you. He starts asking you for money, but then you notice like stuff's missing because he's stealing it and selling it for drug money. There comes a point that even though you love your brother, you have to kick him out and you have to let him suffer the consequences of his behavior. If he hits his rock bottom, maybe he'll turn his life around. Then you've restored your brother. But as long as you're enabling him, he's just going to keep abusing your relationship and stealing from you and taking advantage of you. So the only way you can actually help your brother is to stop helping him. And you have to have
Yeah.
the same attitude. Like I genuinely don't relish the thought of what's necessarily going to happen, but unfortunately it's the only way forward because there's no way this doesn't end badly. And so also we can't stop it anyway. If we could like prevent this from happening for another 100 years, that way we could all live and die peacefully in our beds, we probably would too. But that's just simply that's not one of our options. So our only options are do you just keep ignoring the problem until you can't ignore it anymore? But then if you wait until the very end, you don't have any options. You're basically stuck with whatever is in front of you. And I have a very grisly kind of category for this. So if you think about the Jews in Germany when the Nazis took power, you had basically four groups. You had the Jews who left when the Nazis first took power, there was like a 5-year gap between when the Nazis took power and what's called the Night of Broken Glass, where they started basically destroying Jewish businesses, and that's when the Jews really got out. But between that, there's about 5 years where Jews were basically selling their stuff and getting out. And you call those the alarmist Jews. Now, a lot of people told them they were crazy, they were overreacting. Hitler was going to get voted out in the next election. There's nothing to worry about. What are you doing? But they got out. Then the Night of Broken Glass happened, where basically things got really bad, and a lot of people had to leave with nothing but the clothes on their back. They had to leave everything behind, but they lived. Then you have the third group, which I call the Warsaw Ghetto Jews. So the Warsaw Ghetto was the Jews that were rounded up and they were going to be sent to concentration camps. And rather than just die in the concentration camps, they stood and fought. They didn't accomplish anything. They stood and fought. They held out for about a month and they were all killed. They didn't harm the Nazi war machine. They didn't make a dent. They didn't affect any change. They just died warrior deaths. And so for some people, that's the only thing they have to look forward to is dying a warrior's death. And then, of course, the fourth group are the ones who just got into the ovens, and that was it. So what group do you want to be in? Like, obviously, in hindsight, we'd all like to be in the first group. We all like to be the Jews who sold all of our stuff and got out relatively unscathed. Sure, we had to start a new life somewhere else, but we weren't penniless, we weren't homeless. We weren't fleeing, certain death. But in order to be that first group, you have to act early. And so this is that window of time. Things haven't gotten that bad. Once you get to the Night of Broken Glass stage, then it's like, when do you leave? And in fact, I was watching some videos about Viktor Frankl, who's a Holocaust survivor. He had the option, because he was a doctor, of basically going to America, but it was only for him. If he was to go to America, he would have had to leave his family behind. And so he stayed with his family, and then they were arrested and sent to the concentration camps, and everyone was killed but him. So it's one of those things where, like, when you're at that stage, a lot of people, even when they're given the option to live, will stay with their family, and they'll all die together. So I'm trying to help you. We have a limited window where you have the ability to make a difference that could potentially save your life and the lives of the people you love. But if you squander this time, thinking, oh, we're going to get them in 2024, or, oh, then that time will end, and then you'll have the Night of Broken Glass, and then you'll realize how screwed you are. And then your only choices are to get in the oven or to die a warrior's death. But either way, that's it. There's no way to get out the other end of this intact. It's just choosing, how do you want to die? And so I don't want us to get to that stage. I want us to live. I want us to outlast what's coming so that we can rebuild America or whatever. Like, let's rebuild a country based on freedom.
Yeah.
We can call it whatever we want.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for that super chat. DJ Yassi gives us $5 Australian again and says, sorry, I'm like itchy for some reason. Feminism is just a subset of communism. It just uses female victimhood to push for free stuff. Thank you for that. Zeranx gives us $5 US and says, so it's likely that there will be a reset of gynocentrism rather than a tempering of it. That's a damn shame. Thank you. Did you want to say something to that?
Well, so gynocentrism, there's different definitions of it. So you look at, like, even in hard patriarchal societies where you have like warlords, the life of the average woman is better than the life of the average man. Yes, the warlord is obviously king, but I use the example of the war boys in Mad Max Fury Road. So
Yeah.
yes, and Morton Joe, he basically was like a dictator and he ruled over everyone. But look at how he treated his wives versus how he treated the war boys. The war boys definitely had it worse than his wives did. So even in a hard patriarchal society, there is no concept of equality, and there never will be. Like, this idea of women are going to be, so the idea is either, so you either have to go back to patriarchy, where men are responsible for women and women submit to men, which is historically how it's always been, or women could be responsible for themselves and actually be equal partners with men. And that sounds good, but that's just as utopian as what feminism wants. Women are biologically incapable of what you're asking them to do. They're not built for it. It's just true. And I know it sounds great. I would love to, like, I don't want to take care of these adult children who expect me to provide for them and everything. Like, wouldn't it be nice to have a woman who is responsible for herself and can actually be your equal partner? Wouldn't that be wonderful? Like, wouldn't you rather have that than taking care of a giant baby? But
yeah,
unfortunately, that's how humans evolved. So maybe once we get to like the level of technology where we can change our biology, become something else, whether with cybernetics or some type of genetic manipulation, maybe we can all become futa penis, futanaris, and we can all fuck each other in our clip penis and ball pussies, or we can reproduce like the Nameks and just spit eggs out of our mouth, or be like the Drac from Enemy Mine. The sky's the limit. When we get to that point, when we have full-on genetic manipulation, we can be whatever we want to be. But as long as we're constrained by the actual biology of nature and humanity, women cannot be this equal partner that's responsible for themselves. It's just not how humans evolved. If we were bear people, because females and bears are very independent. So unfortunately, we're not bears. Unfortunately, the monkeys kind of drew the long straw, and the bears didn't. So we didn't evolve from bears; we evolved from monkeys, and monkeys are not independent. You know, whatever. They're mostly patriarchal, except for bonobos. That's a very niche case.
Yeah.
They're actually incapable of surviving outside the little pocket of the Congo, protected by scientists. So they're kind of a doomed species because of their egalitarianism.
Yeah.
To tell you something.
Yeah, that was one thing I was going to mention is that when you were talking with, you were on Terrence Pop's show like a week ago, and you were talking about the problem with men's rights activists. And we are MRAs, but we, like here at HBR, but I agree with all the things that you said about this idea of equality. It was like a non-starter from the beginning, because we don't believe that that is the at all an achievable goal, nor a desirable one, because I think equality is just another word for enslavement. All it does is the idea of equality, the only way to make it work is to hold people back and to turn them into essentially not allow them, because it always gets to a point where, and I'm not talking about things like treating everyone the same under the law. That's not what I mean by equality. I mean, and it doesn't matter if it's equality of opportunity or equality of outcome, because equality of opportunity always turns into equality of outcome, because it gets into this thing where we need to, people want to control the people who are doing well. You know what I mean?
Equality of opportunity is just freedom. It's basically a bastardization of freedom. So when you say equality of opportunity, what you actually mean is freedom from constraint.
Yes, but that's not how most people say it. Like
it's word games. It's word games.
Yes, so it's word games, because that's not how it's used.
Yeah, egalitarians they specifically rebrand freedom as a form of equality to try to trick you into supporting equality. So don't use equality of opportunity. Say freedom from constraint. Not because once you give them that nose under the tent, when you start agreeing with equality, they say, "Oh, well, you agree with equality of opportunity." Well, the only way to have meaningful equality of opportunity is if we redistribute this and if we give people this. And so you just don't even.
We got to make sure everyone starts at the same place. You know, that's what they'll say. But that always means essentially redistribution of some kind, and it also means suppression too. You know.
Okay, but I want to say one thing about gynocentrism. So if you look at the Immortan Joe situation, where the women were treated better than the men, that seems horribly unfair. But if you look at a farm, the livestock, the cows, the chickens, the sheep, whatever, they're treated very well by the farmer. You know, they're fed, they're clothed, they're given health care, but
they're clothed.
If you were an alien, you know, some like green alien on a UFO observing the farmer taking care of these animals, you would be forgiven for thinking that the animals were in charge and that the farmer was like their slave, because he was taking care of them and feeding them and clothing them, and if they were sick, he was getting them medicine. He was even like, you know, helping them breed and stuff. Like you would be forgiven for making that mistake. But clearly the farmer isn't taking care of these animals because he's their slave. He's taking care of these animals because they're a resource. And the reason why women are treated better than men in even the most primitive patriarchal societies is because women are a resource. They have babies. And this has been like, if you have a tribe of 50 men and 50 women, you could have 50 children a year. If you lose 40 men, you can have 50 children a year. If you lose 40 women, you can only have 10 children a year. So simply due to that quirk of reproduction, women have inherently more value. And this isn't a human thing. This is just a reproductive thing. This applies to all any similarly reproductive animal has the same issue. That's just the way it is. Now, again, once we get to the point where we can like rewrite human genetics or biology, or we can make, you know, we can reproduce by spores or budding, like gremlins, just spray us with water after midnight and little babies grow on our skin. Who knows? Like the sky's the limit. But as long as we're constrained by nature, you have to kind of if you want to define that as gynocentrism, I would disagree with you, because the farmer isn't doing it for the sake of the animals. He's doing it for his own benefit. It just involves taking care of the animals. So I don't define that as gynocentrism. Yes, men take care of women, but they own the women. The women belong to them, and the children are a resource, and that's why the women are taken care of. So if you're looking forward to, again, if you're looking forward to some future where women are equal or women are responsible for themselves, you're not looking at humanity. Don't make the mistake that the commies do, ignoring human nature and ignoring reality because you want to live in some utopia, because that's only going to lead to pain, suffering, and death. You have to accept the constraints. You don't have to accept them forever. Let's work on that technology. Let's break free of our biology. But until we get there, we have to respect nature. We have to respect the constraints of reality. Otherwise, we're just going to make things harder for ourselves.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. I think that we have to live in reality, and I think that gynocentrism as a word, it's pretty overused. I don't think it applies a lot of the time, and so I try not to use it unless I really mean it. Okay, so Forever39 gives us $25. Thank you, Forever39. And he says the black pill is a bitter pill to swallow, but it should have a place on YouTube. Thanks for having TFM on. I don't think he's being. I know it sounds black pill, but I think it's just utilitarian. Maybe that's not the word. He's being pragmatic.
I'm being pragmatic. So
yeah.
And again, I'm trying to save your life. I'm trying to give you, and it's not just saying it's over, guys. Oh my God, it's so over. All fucked. Like that scene in Aliens. Like, we're game over, man. Game over.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not that guy. I'm giving you options, and I do have hope for the future. But in order to get to that future, we have to be smart. We can't just put our head in the sand and be like, we'll get them in 2024, trust the plan. That's going to get you killed. So, it's like I'm the doc. Like, let's say you're morbidly obese and I'm a doctor and I'm warning you, hey, if you don't lose weight, you're going to get a heart attack.
Well, hold on a second. I just got to say, our likes are going down. Can you guys, I don't know why that's happening, but we had about 50 likes and now we have 44. So can you guys smash that like button? I want to see if we can get it over 100. I see there's like 150 people watching. So, and that's just on YouTube. Yeah, I don't know if that's, I don't, yeah, something's going on. Cause we had like, we had over 50 likes and now it went down. Okay. I see people hitting okay.
We have to praise our glorious president, Joe Biden, and his stunning and brave vice president, Kamala Harris.
And they totally won the election fair and square, and Biden is the most popular president in U.S. history.
I trust everything Dr. Fauci says without question. And I've gotten all 5 different vaccines at the same time. Like, one wasn't good enough. I wanted all of them. It's like Pokemon. I got to catch them all.
Yeah.
So hopefully that was good enough. Hopefully that fooled the algorithm.
Let's see. We are at now, how many likes do we got? 70. Oh, and we got 3 dislikes. Okay. You know what? It's fine. I think dislikes help the algorithm too. It doesn't matter. It's better than saying nothing.
I understand. Look, there are some people who I've lost people in my audience and I've upset people. There are some people who really, they have their heart set on this civil war. They really want to fight this civil war. And when I tell them you can't win, here's why, instead of listening to me, like, you'd think being warned that you're marching to certain death and how you shouldn't do that, and here's what you should do instead so that you don't die and you can like build a better future, you think that would be like good news. But no, they're really upset. They really, I don't know, it doesn't make sense to me. They might just be CIA glow-in-the-dark agents, who knows. But,
yeah, see, we were at 77 and now we're down to 74.
See?
So like, no, hit like again, guys. Don't reverse it. Even the dislike went away. Maybe someone unclicked it, but
I don't know, man.
Yeah, I don't know either. It's fine. Like, I get it. DJ Yassi gives us $5 Australian and says, Brian, based on what TFM said, do you still think it's possible for us to give women the same level of agency as men? I think we can make them the offer, but I mean, the way I see it is if you, regardless of whether you're male or female, if you're unable to take responsibility, then you don't deserve authority. And I'll just leave it at that.
You look, so I have my system, my ideal system would be a net taxpayer voter system. And also, so that would be for the House. The House would be elected by net taxpayers. The president would be elected by veterans and those who who basically are signed up for the draft.
Because he's the leader of the he's the leader of the military, right?
Yeah. So and they're the ones who pay the costs. Like who pays for all the stuff the government does? The taxpayers. So who should vote for the Congress? The taxpayers. Who dies in war? The people who sign up for the military. So who should elect a commander in chief? The people who sign up for the military. Those who bear the cost should be the ones who have the power. So if you
men
want
mostly.
well, look, mostly, but if it's that important to you, if it's super important to you to vote, all you have to do is not take government services and pay more in taxes than you draw in benefits. If it's that important to you for the vote for the commander in chief, then all you have to do is meet the male standard, because having two standards is dumb. Because if you can't do your job, the bullets don't care. Now there are women, there's like a small amount of women, I want to say like 4 to 6%, who can meet the male standard. So there will be women who will meet the male standard, both for the military and the net taxpayer, and they will vote. They'll be relatively small, probably in the single digits percentage wise, and that's okay. If it's that important to them, they can vote. And there's a lot of men who won't be able to vote because they aren't going to be net taxpayers, or they won't be able to serve in the military, or whatever, like, or they don't want to, and that's fine. So the whole point is you have to tie responsibility to freedom and authority. So if you want this freedom and authority, you have to take responsibility. If you're unable to, or you don't want to, that's fine. Just you don't get this authority then. You don't get this freedom then. So go do something else. And if they're like, oh, but I want freedom and authority. No. Well, we're going to riot. Well, then, that's not going to end well for you, because we're not going to let you destroy this country because you want to have it both ways.
Yes. All right. Zeranx gives us $5 and says, I understand women are a bottleneck. I'm not looking for true equality. I'm talking about femmes being less resilient as a result of womanism. Wait, did you make a post earlier about... I don't know. I don't have all the... Oh, he said, so it's likely that there'll be a reset of gynocentrism rather than the tempering of it. That's a damn shame. So that was a response to when we're talking about gynocentrism. Well, and I guess he's agreeing with you that he's not looking for true equality.
Okay, well, there's a third option. The third option, there is a way to restore male authority over the family while leaving women alone. And it's called replacing women with technology. So if we have artificial wombs and sex robots and waifus, we can literally we can basically accomplish the same goal. So if women aren't even part of the equation anymore, if men can just have children via technology, and there's no women there's no women involved, then men, by virtue of being the only human in the room, it's their family. There's no other human to basically swoop in and be like, these are my kids. I'm not happy. I'm taking half your shit and I'm going to live with my mama. Like, that's not going to happen. So now you own your family again. So patriarchy's been restored over your family, and yet women's rights were unaffected. They can go slut it up with their OnlyFans. No one will give a crap. So you'll have your waifu and your little cyborg monkey kids or whatever. And there you go. Problem solved. Now, is that realistic? Probably not. Is that going to be economical for most people? Absolutely not. But that's really the only way. Or we can change our biology to basically transcend humanity to reproduce in a different way. To basically because if we didn't have two genders, we didn't reproduce sexually, then obviously we'd have no gynocentrism. If we were asexually reproducing, or if we reproduced in some other way, or we only had one gender, then obviously we wouldn't have these issues with feminism because there wouldn't be women. But here's the key though, is that doesn't really solve anything. Like, even if, let's go extreme transhumanism. We all are, we basically changed our genetics. Let's not go full cyborg hive mind, but let's say we use technology to perfect humanity to the greatest extent possible. We all have genius level IQs. We all have Chad bodies and 12-inch cocks, and we're
even
all
the women. Sure,
no,
they can.
All the men are basically like the Giga Chad meme. We're a world full of Giga Chads, and all the women are like 10 out of 10 models. Like, everybody is exactly the pinnacle that we could ever be regarding, physically, mentally, and everything. Even then, you would have competition because resources aren't infinite, and there will still be the ugliest, Chad. They'll be the dumbest genius.
Yep.
You know, if you look at sports, there's always a team that comes in last. Even if they're
Mm-hmm.
all professionals, even if they all can beat any semi-pro team with both hands tied behind their back, someone has to come in last.
Yep.
And in that case, there's still going to be envy and resentment and dominance and all the things that we see in society now. It's just going to be more petty. Like Coltrane did a video about how women react to air conditioning and how they have it so good they complain about the dumbest crap imaginable. But imagine if we solve, like, the more problems we solve for women, you notice their demands become more and more irrational. They complain about things that are just so far past the point of who gives a crap that, like, it's insane that we even listen. But because we want to fuck them and because they vote, everyone listens to them. So that's just that's the world we live in. But in the same way, the more if we use technology to create equality, however you want to define that, we'll still have scarcity, we'll still have competition, we'll still have winners and losers, and we'll still have envy and resentment. It'll just be about the most petty things imaginable. Like we'll have racism based on a mole. You know,
Yeah.
like, oh, you have a mole, or your eyes are hazel blue and not light blue, or oh, you know, like the dumbest crap imaginable. But we'll fight wars and commit genocides and do the horrible things based on the silliest things imaginable from our perspective, because that's just human nature. The only way to really solve that is to basically you have to have no scarcity. You have to have infinite
Mm-hmm.
resources for everyone, where there's
Or
nothing to fight over.
yeah.
There's no competition. But then at that point, you enter the mouse utopia, where everybody has everything they want.
We
and
don't want that.
Right, and then they have nothing to live for, and or they go full on Eldar, and they have like murder orgies until they create the elder god of, you know, some chaos god spawn, and then
Yeah.
eats our souls or something. So, you know, it doesn't end well there's no way this ends well. You have to kind of
We have to learn to live with our flaws, basically.
Well,
but go ahead.
Going back to Eastern philosophy, you have to accept the world as it is, and you have to
Mhm.
go with it. You have to go with the flow of nature.
Yeah.
You know, it's fine to want to. The best way to improve your life is to go with nature rather than railing against it and trying to fix it, because you always create more problems. Because when you create the good, you create the evil. When you create the beautiful, you create the ugly, because they all go together. So just live in the world and accept. And the thing is, the world's beautiful. There's so much things to love about the world that, you know, they're really, once you kind of tune out the bull crap, you know, you realize, like, other than the whole not dying from communism thing, the world's a beautiful place. So once you get the whole not dying from communism thing ironed out, then you can start enjoying life. You can really start getting into it and appreciating your life for what it is. Because what else is there? What's the point of not dying if you're not going to enjoy life?
Yeah, I agree, 100%. I always tell people, you know, I warn against like being on the internet too much, because I think that's when people get really depressed and nihilistic and stuff about everything. Is they forget to like get up, go out, and like experience the world, because they might live in a ghetto or something. Yeah, I know, but like try to, like, you know, take a bus then. I used to live in Chicago, and I would still take the time to go, you know, to Chinatown or go to the lake or something.
Get a rub and tug.
Yeah, like they have massage parlors, and I'm saying, like, try to, you know, live it up. Just make sure there isn't some like angry dude outside, like waiting to shoot the place up. I mean,
some angry dude with a porn addiction. The only way to make the voices stop.
Yeah. No, but I mean, yeah, really, like, get out of your house and talk to real living people with blood in their veins and shit.
Or you can meditate, and you can actually, like, you can grow your mind and your spirit. If you can't leave, maybe you don't care, maybe you're introverted, I'm not going to judge. Seriously, look into like Taoism or Zen Buddhism. You know, do some meditation. It's good stuff.
There you go. Rico Champagne gives us $2 Canadian and says TFM's theory on UFO footage. Was there like recent UFO footage? Seems like a little bit of a tangent, but
yeah. Well, I mean, pretty much all UFO footage that I've seen is basically explained through very mundane explanations. It's like a bird. It's basically the radar glitching, or it's a comet. They're not aliens. So
Yeah,
I
why
like
would they want
now.
to come here anyway?
Yeah, is there life now? Are there other life forms on other planets somewhere in the universe? Absolutely. I mean, just simply the law of probabilities. There's so many millions of galaxies that to believe that there's only one planet and one galaxy out of millions where there's any form of life, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But is that life flying around in flying saucers and probing farmers in their beeholes and doing crop circles? No, no, that's all. Those are just poor rednecks looking for attention who like stuff in their butt. I mean, I'm not going to judge.
Yeah, we'll probably. I mean, I know that there's aliens out there just because, like you said, it's the numbers game. You can just tell, right? It's obvious. But we'll probably never meet them. Not in our lifetime, anyway. Okay, so wow, we've been going for a while now. I appreciate the conversation. You had a lot of thoughts. I guess you're not really talking about things like gender and men and women that much anymore because of where we are, and it's sort of like your priorities have shifted. So
yeah, there's a simpler time when avoiding feminism and Me Too was that was your biggest threat to your freedom, was dating the wrong girl, being in the wrong place at the wrong time, and then finding out that this girl regrets the sex she had and decides to ruin your life with an accusation. And because the laws are crap, you have really no defense. Like, your only defense in a rape accusation is like she's just making it all up and you have an alibi. Then you might be able to get away with it. But if you actually had sex with her and she cries rape, you're done. There used to be an evidentiary standard where you were innocent until proven guilty. You having sex wasn't enough sufficient proof that you raped her. There had to be some additional proof that a rape had occurred. But that was those days are over. So I mean, I care about freedom. We both are individuals. We both care about freedom. So my goal has always been to try to keep men free, so that they can pursue their life's meaning and purpose, whatever that may be. And so earlier, back in the ye olden times of 2015, the biggest threat to my freedom and possibly to most men's freedom in America was the encroachment of feminism and the erosion of men's rights and legal rights and political rights and so forth. And those were the days, man. Those were the days. I miss those days. Those were innocent times.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we face larger threats to our freedom than a false rape accusation.
For sure.
Now, that doesn't mean women and feminism isn't a problem. It's just that there's now other things you need to be aware of that are going to take your freedom away, that are probably, and unfortunately, like, if you go MGTOW and get a waifu or something, and you get your sexual and emotional needs met by your waifu, you don't really have to worry about Me Too anymore. The likelihood of some random woman just accusing you out of the blue, very slim to none. Usually women, when they falsely accuse a guy of rape, it's because they actually had sex. So if you just avoid women and don't date them, your likelihood of getting Me Too'd is very slim to none. Your likelihood of getting a false rape accusation is very slim to none. So you could live a very comfortable life, even in a feminist society, if you're MGTOW. So going MGTOW basically solved the problem for most men. So the goal was, spread the red pill, get men in the door, teach them how fuck things are so they can save themselves from feminism. And then the problem was solved. Once you were red pilled and understood the score and you made an educated decision regarding how you wanted to engage with women, our job was finished. We can move on to the next guy and, save people's from getting divorced, raped, or false accused and stuff. But now, when you're talking about hyperinflation, communism, mass starvation, and enslavement,
printing money and all this other shit.
Unfortunately, going MGTOW will not save you from literally any of that. You can't just go your own way.
If you're paying taxes, you're in that system.
Yeah.
So unless you try to go off the grid and hopefully they don't find you like in a tall tree in a ghillie suit in your little treehouse, you're not out of the system. That's just it. Like, the system is coming for you. It actually depends on men's input, because men pay They pay 80% of all of the taxes that go into social programs, and women are the net beneficiaries. So even if you're like, avoid all women, avoid marriage, avoid dating, avoid everything, but you try to live in the society, you are still getting your money taken from you and given to women, like
Well,
writ
and what's
large.
funny, earlier on in when MGTOW was fresh and new, there were people advocating for a level system, trying to say like if you're a level 1 MGTOW, you're red pill aware, you still date women. If you're level 2, you don't let whatever.
I
And then
remember
basically,
seeing that going around. Yeah.
yeah, and it went to like level 5 where you're like living in the woods like the Unabomber and everything. But here's the thing though. In a
Yeah.
weird way, that whole like level system kind of came true because
Mm-hmm.
now you kind of not necessarily live out in the woods. Like that's one option. Again, I've given you 5 options, but you have to the society, and it's not look, this isn't feminism. It's related to it. It's part of this whole progressive push towards equality, but it's not women's fault. It's not feminism's fault. It's just part of our values shifting from freedom to equality, and it's inevitable. So now, being red pilled about women and feminism isn't enough. You have to now again. You don't have to live in the woods. You don't have to leave the country. You don't have to live in Alaska. You don't have to live out of a converted van. You don't have to join a no-go zone. Like I'm just giving you these options. If you have a plan, like my general advice to anyone is go where your people are. If you have people, whatever that means to you, go where your people are. If you have enough people, you're going to be fine. But if you don't have people, or if you don't have enough people, then consider the 5 options I've given you. And whatever one works best for you in your lifestyle, like not everybody wants to live in a van, not everyone wants to live in the woods, not everyone wants to live in Alaska. So whatever option speaks to you and seems feasible to you, all I'm asking you to do is take this time. And look, if you want to believe in the Boogaloo and you want to believe that we're going to get him in 2024, you can still do that. But it's the little saying, it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Let's say you start preparing, you buy some land, and all honestly, right now, interest rates are the lowest they've ever been, and inflation hasn't hit yet. So if you get a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, basically that's free real estate, because when the inflation hits from all the money we're printing, and that you're paying the lowest interest rate ever on real estate that's appreciating while the mortgage payment is not, it's free real estate. So there's actually, if you have the cash on hand and you have good credit, it's an excellent time to buy some real estate. So let's say you buy some real estate and you put a cabin on it, you start moving some stuff over just as a bug out location. And then let's say nothing happens. Let's say we vote them out in 2024. We have a massive red pill awakening. Everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, communism doesn't work. I didn't know that before." And everyone just sees everything your way. And the right comes roaring back and we win the culture war and we own the libs and everyone throws a party. Okay. Let's say all your wildest dreams come true and nothing happens. No, you didn't like, I was totally wrong. Bitcoin is the future, all that stuff. And so, okay, now you own this land that still is worth something and it's appreciated because of the inflation. So you just sell it or give it to your son or something. Like you didn't lose anything.
Yeah.
Like if you build a community, well then now you have a community. Is that a bad thing to live in a community with like-minded people that you share
No, you
values
should.
with?
No, you should have that anyway. I think that's
Right.
the way
So
you should work. Yeah.
Right. So worst case scenario, you have a converted van or SUV that you don't end up using, or you have a cabin in the woods from some land you bought that you can just sell for a profit because of inflation. It's guaranteed to go up with inflation. So nothing I'm telling you to do is costing you anything. You might see it as an opportunity cost, but it's not like I'm not asking you to donate to any candidate or to back a Kickstarter. I'm asking you to do something that you should do anyway, that let's say you don't need it. Okay, then you don't need it. And then so you're fine. You have this van. You could take that converted van on camping trips. Like you could just go out on a camping trip with your family and like, oh, let's take the SUV, and then you have a bed in it and whatever, and it could be a fun little camping, vehicle. Or you could donate it to a homeless guy, make his day. It's like, hey there, Toothless Joe. Here's a converted van you can live in. You don't have to sleep on a park bench anymore. And he's going to give you a toothless blowjob on the spot. He's going to love you so much. And then, so that's all I'm asking you to do. So
Yeah.
while you're holding out hope for owning the libs in 2024, and maybe you're holding out for Trump to come back, or maybe the governor of Florida to run, and while you're working that plan, just please consider maybe putting some time and effort and maybe some resources into something, just in case we don't get him back in 2024, that Trump or DeSantis doesn't happen. Or what if the Democrats just steal elections again, and that's just how things work going forward, and elections don't matter anymore? Like, I know that sounds crazy, but what if that whole path is closed, and now we have to start thinking about something else? So keep the hope alive. Go ahead, wear your MAGA hat, do whatever. But while you're doing that, also think about joining a community, converting a van, buying some land. Think about maybe going to Alaska or some other place, somewhere remote, not Texas or Florida where everybody's going, but somewhere like Montana or the Dakotas or Idaho, like a low population place where it would be easy to just disappear. Because the last thing you want to do is trust the plan. You can keep an eye on the plan, but don't put all your eggs in the trust the plan basket, because I remember 2020, and hopefully you remember 2020, and that didn't work out so well. So
Mhm.
just consider, because I know it's a black pill, but actually, like, I actually care about you, and I'm trying to help you not die. So
Yeah, well, I don't disagree with any of that. I think that most of our listeners are on board. We were never the kind of trust the plan types. I think that the only thing that you can hope to do when it comes to government is get someone in that's going to be less of an obstacle, because in general, state is going to state, and that's what they're after. And yeah, I mean, like, discussing men's issues in whatever way how they manifest, whether you're a MGTOW guy or a red pillar guy or an MRA guy, as it ultimately has to be a discussion about liberty for men. That's not only why it's not only important, because without it, then none of this other shit matters, because men obviously won't ever like get priority in a system that is concerned with equality. So that's just like a pipe dream anyway, which I knew from the beginning. But also because liberty is a value that men themselves are attracted to. And I think that it's hard, it's risky, but this is what we should be looking at in general. So I don't disagree. Also, Colombia, I think, is a nice country that's on the way up. Like a guy. Do you remember Steve? Well, do you know who Steve Brule is?
No, I don't. I've never heard that name before.
But you know who Big Red is, the feminist from the old days?
Yeah.
So the guy who filmed that, his name is Steve Brule, and he's basically made like multiple videos he was just filming feminists in the area, and it went viral. And he lived in Canada, because that's where all that shit took place. And he moved to, and I believe it's Colombia, but I could be wrong. And that was his, and he left years ago. When Trudeau was elected, he was like, I'm getting out of here. Right. I think Canada might be in worse shape, especially with the authoritarianism going on up there.
They're already building concentration camps for COVID people who won't get vaccinated.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Brazil?
Yeah.
No. Is it Brazil? Okay. Zarang says he's in Brazil.
Yeah, there are countries. So there's like countries like I've seen people go to Ukraine, Poland. There are countries now. If the best country that I can think of is Switzerland, because they're highly defensible. They have 2 mountains, and they basically noped out of both world wars. So, but the problem is it's extremely hard to get into Switzerland. So it's one of those things where the countries that are the best to go to, they're not pro-immigrant, which is kind of like one of the reasons why they're so good. So it's like a catch-22. Like, you want to go to these countries because they're all based in red pilled. The problem is they don't want you there because you're not from there, and they're anti-immigrant. And the countries that are just like, oh yeah, come live here, they're the last places you want to go, because they're all full of lefty commies. So it's just like, I would love to go to Singapore. I would love to live in Singapore, but
Yes.
I don't think we have the time.
Thailand's supposedly not bad. But
Yeah,
okay, well,
I don't,
go ahead. Go ahead.
I don't have time. Like, for me to go to Singapore, I had it all worked out, but it was going to take me about 10 years before I could move to Singapore. I don't think we have 10 years, which is why I kind of switched gears towards Alaska, because Alaska is more of like a 5-year plan, whereas Singapore is more of a 10-year plan. So, Alaska's fine. Not ideal. I would have probably liked Singapore better, but Alaska's fine.
Yeah. All right. DJ Yassi gives us $5 Australian. I'll read the last of these super chats, then we'll wrap it up. He says, I think TFM sees the gender dynamic as a symptom rather than the root cause, while you see it as the root cause and other things as symptoms. Well, yeah, I guess so. I mean, I don't think that we're that different on it. I mean, I believe that there's a reason why the story of Cain and Abel is as old as it is. And I think that I'm not a religious person, but I do think it's, these stories, they are trying to share wisdom with us. And,
I think the problem is yin and yang is out of balance. You can say that gender dynamics are out of balance. You could put a gendered spin on it, but I would say so weakness and strength, masculine and feminine, they're all related, but they're not necessarily like you were talking about feminine men. So it's not a man versus woman, like an actual biological sex issue. It's really more of a yin yang issue. It just basically the balance has been disrupted. We've gone
I don't think we're saying things too differently. I'm using language that probably it's just different words. I agree with you on that. I've read about some Taoism and Moism as well, which I thought was funny because it sounds a lot like Maoism, but DJ Yassi gives us $10 Australian and says, Brian, I think the main problem is that even if the left consisted of a loud minority, by the way, not an argument I'm making, the average person still believes in equality and progressivism. Yes, they do. And I've said that many times. So it's not as simple as just standing up to leftists. No, it's not.
Well, you are a left. If you believe in, no, it's not necessarily you believe in equality. What's your highest value? If you had to prioritize, like you have tradition and stability, you have freedom, and you have equality. And if you were to rank, let's say you had 10 points. So I'm giving you 10 points. You could put them in any one of these values. You can rank them, put all 10 of them in freedom, or you could put 3, and 4, whatever. How you put and allocate these points is where you're going to fall in the political compass. So if you're balanced, you're probably like a centrist. If you favor equality more or freedom more or stability more, that's going to be where you are. The average American either wants to balance freedom and equality, which is illogical. Freedom and equality are opposites. They come, again, like one produces its opposite. But people don't understand that they want to have it both ways, because there's nothing more American than wanting to have it both ways. But that is unfortunately where we're at. But most Americans, they don't, it's like the French Revolution, fraternité, liberté, égalité. And how did that work out? How did that work out, having brotherhood, freedom, and liberty? Oh, they all cut each other's heads off. That's how that worked out. So that's why you can't, if you commit to freedom and equality at the same time, you're doomed to fail. You have to pick one.
That's why it's utopian. I mean, even if it's trying to balance those two things or just leaning all the way into equality.
Well, there was a YouTuber who developed an AI program to optimize an economy, and his two functions were productivity and equality. Now, he even admitted that when you had a free market, you maximize productivity, but you had inequality.
Yeah.
But he developed this AI program to basically create the ultimate redistributive tax system to maximize. So he optimized equality and productivity, but by his own standard, his system was half as productive as the free market system, which means because it's half as productive, it would be half as wealthy. So the people would be earning half the standard of living of the people who live in the free market system. So, and that's the best he can do. The best system you could do by optimizing equality and productivity is about half as wealthy and having half the standard of living as the one that has the free market. So, but then the question is, but what about the inequality? There's people at the top who have more money than me. Yeah, but you have twice the standard of living.
Well,
Like
yeah, I
who?
mean, the
Like
poorest people alive today in the United States live better than a king did, like,
oh, well,
in the
it's
Middle
worse than that.
Ages.
If you earn 36,000 a year, which is only $3,000 a month, you're in the top 1% of the world globally.
Mm-hmm.
99% of people in the world earn less than you. So you are in the top one, but no one in America who earns 33,000 a month thinks that they're in the 1%. They think they're the working class. And they look at Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, get them, get the rich." And they don't realize they're the rich compared to the rest of the world. But that's, call it the hedonic treadmill, call it hypergamy, whatever you want. It's part of human nature. People just aren't content. But the point is that when you have inequality, inequality doesn't actually hurt you. Like if you turn the TV off and you have no idea who Jeff Bezos or
Oh,
Elon
yeah.
Musk are, and you never hear about these billionaires earning all this money, all you
Mm-hmm.
see is like, oh, Amazon delivers stuff to my door. Oh, we have affordable electric cars. Oh, we have private space travel. How amazing. I love this country. This is so amazing. Oh, do you hear Jeff Bezos? He has $1 billion. Who cares? Like, it doesn't hurt. The problem is we focus on inequality. Inequality does nothing. And I'll give you the perfect example: Singapore. Singapore has vast inequality. They also have the average income in Singapore is 6 figures American. They have no minimum wage. They have no unions. They have no crime. Their cities are clean, and again, higher standard of living. But the way they accomplish this is they beat your butt with bamboo for the like you spit gum on the sidewalk, they will cane you, like they will beat you like Passion of the Christ style with a bamboo stick. And if you spread communism, they arrest you for sedition. Spreading any kind of class warfare, any kind of race warfare or religious warfare, they will arrest you for sedition. Now, they didn't have gender warfare. That's the one thing they screwed up because they didn't stop feminism. So they stopped communism. They stopped, racial justice crap, like the whole, like, whatever it's called.
Race grifting.
Oh, no, but
The,
the
the,
thing,
s-
the thing they're teaching in school, critical race theory.
oh, critical race
So
theory. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So if you spread communism, critical race theory, or any kind of religious supremacism, they will arrest you and cane you and charge you with sedition. But if you spread feminism, no problem. So
Right.
that nobody's perfect, and as a consequence, Singapore has a very crappy birth rate. And again, nobody's perfect. So look, progress. Next time, though, we're going to ban class warfare, religious warfare, racial warfare, and gender warfare, and we're going to crack that whip on people's asses when they try to spread that crap. And then we too can have a clean city with no crime, everyone earning a 6 figure salary. Like, people are so rich in Singapore that they have live-in servants. Like, the average
Mm-hmm.
person in Singapore has live-in servants, like something out of a movie. Like, they have help. The average person has help in Singapore. And they have no unions, they have no minimum wage. It's like it's right there. It works. It works so well. And I can't, like, my mind can't even one of the reasons I want to live in Singapore is my mind can't even wrap around the idea of a city that isn't run by commies. Because every city in America is just full of leftists complaining about how oppressed they are and give me all your money. And it's just like, to have a city that isn't run by commies, where everyone just goes to work and it's clean and crime free. It's like I just I get like teary eyed just thinking about it. Like, oh my, I just want that. I just
Yeah.
want that.
Are you living in a city right now? You
I
don't
don't
have
live
to
in the
share if
city.
it, but
I don't live in the city. I live close enough to the city that I can commute in if I need to. But honestly, COVID's been a pretty good blessing because I've been able to do pretty much everything from home. And like before COVID, I had to do a lot more in-person meetings. But
Mhm.
since COVID, a lot of people are completely fine with remote conferencing. So now it went from like probably 80% of my stuff at home and 20% going to in-person meetings. Now it's like 95/5. Like, I very rarely go to in-person meetings. So I'm actually a lot more productive, which is
Yeah.
great. Yeah, that was just because of COVID. But
All
I,
right.
I still can't leave the area because my customers slash clients are still there. So if they want to meet with me, I need to be available. I can't be like, oh, I moved. I'm in Alaska now. So
Right, right.
whoops.
Yeah, you still need to access to them, to the clients. But yeah, I mean, like that's good. And I guess it gives you a little bit more free time. So if you wanted to, get out of the house, get some sun or something, enjoy I don't know if you're close to nature like I am, where we moved.
I live in I live in a pretty it's not rich, but it's like an upper income neighborhood. So it's safe to leave and walk around. So there's like a walking path and it's safe.
Yeah.
So I'm not,
Well, that's good. All right. Zeranx gives us $5 and says, I have to pay for my mistake. Steve is in DR. Sorry, Brian. So he's in the Dominican Republic. I didn't know that. All right. Okay. Well, that's like right next to PR. So. And GJ Yassi gives us $5 Australian and says, consider making a Mastodon account at paypig.org. Same for the rest of the Badger crew. TFM is on there, and it's basically a Twitter without censorship. That's interesting that no one told me about it. I only learned about this when I brought you on. I never heard of paypig.org before.
So here's the thing. So Gab, and there's Parler, and there's other like alternatives to Twitter. The problem is the alt-right. They're so annoying with their like anti-Semitism and just stuff like that. So Dick Masterson, if you've seen that video where that guy was on Dr. Phil talking about how men are better than women, that was Dick Masterson.
I've never seen it.
Oh, you never seen it? Oh man, he's a legend. He's an absolute legend. But he has a
actually, you know what? Was he like a PUA guy or something? Actually, I think I did see that video years ago.
He wasn't really a PUA. This is he's more like like Tom Likas.
Yeah. Okay. So sure.
He's like that generation. He's like pre-Manosphere. So back in the day before the Manosphere existed, there were like Tom Likas and Dick Masterson. So Tom Likas, obviously his throat's gone and he still has a radio show, but he's not the man he used to be. Dick Masterson has basically a private podcast and he has his own website. Now, Mastodon is a federated instance. So Gab started out as a Mastodon instance, but because they allowed the alt-right on there, the rest of the Gab or the rest of the Mastodon instances basically quarantined that instance off. So Gab is its own thing now. But paypig.org, which is Dick Masterson's instance, is still part of the Fediverse. So it's basically Dick Masterson. He is totally cool with like talking shit about feminism and red pill stuff, but he doesn't want the Nazis there. He doesn't want the people, which is like, I'm totally fine with that because that's the thing. I love free speech. I love freedom. I hate getting censored for like trying to warn people not to get accused of rape and stuff, but I get thrown in the same boat as the alt-right. But then if I go to a free speech platform, my comment section is full of, I'm a degenerate. I'm going to hell and all this, all this and calling me all the bad words. So I won't repeat because I don't want your YouTube channel to get in trouble.
Yeah, I appreciate that. How many of those guys are feds though? Because I feel like I wonder about that. I think it's probably a lot.
I don't know about numerically a lot, but generally though, if someone is in there talking a lot of shit, trying to gin people up to commit a crime, it's like never hire a hitman off the internet because like 99.999% of the time it's like an undercover cop. If you don't know someone, you don't know anyone. So it's like one of those things. Anyway, my point is, so PayPig, I know it has an ironic name. It's not actually full of guys who like throw money at women to call them they're pay piggy. It's basically just like a joke. Dick Masterson's a really cool guy. But it's a place for guys. And the thing is, he's paying for it. See, usually if you want to create your own instance of Mastodon, you have to buy the server space and everything. So Dick Masterson's already bought the server space. And it's a pretty small server. Like it's just his fans, which he's a cool guy anyway, and you'd like his content anyway. So, join his instance, and he's a cool guy, and his fans are cool, and they're not going to get offended if you talk shit about feminists. And you're still part of the Fediverse, so you can talk to people from other instances.
Yeah.
So you're not like quarantined just to the PayPig instance. You can talk to other people throughout the Fediverse, but just not people on Gab. There's actually a feminist instance called Spinster. And so they're kind of quarantined too. No one wants to talk to them because they're like really toxic, man-hating women. So it's really interesting the way the Fediverse kind of does its thing. But anyway, so PayPig is free. You don't have to pay anything. Dick Masterson's paying for everything, but he doesn't. He keeps the Nazis out. So if you're tired of going to free speech platforms and dealing with Nazis all the time, you can go to PayPig and there's no Nazis there, but you can still talk shit about feminists and you won't get hit with a hate speech anything. So it's like the best of both worlds. It's like that perfect balance of like, can I just go somewhere where I can talk about how much feminists suck without also being told how the Jews run the world for 100 times in an hour?
I've been lucky, I guess.
Medium.
I don't run into any Nazis. I run into lots of commies, but I don't really run into Nazis. So, but I'm sure they're out there. They should just
if you go on alt tech, that they're all on alt.
No,
tech.
I'm on Gab and Parler and BitChute and Minds. On BitChute, I see it, but like I see it on other people. It depends on what the video is, and you'll see.
I stopped reading the comment section on BitChute because it's nothing but alt-right people calling.
Yeah, it's like, again, I get that. I think that I wonder how many of those guys are glow in the dark. But all right, DJ Yassi. Yeah, DJ Yassi gives us $2 Australian and says in Singapore there's like a $300 fine for gum. Yeah, that's how clean it is. So put it in the trash. They don't play.
Yeah, like honestly, like I'm the kind of person who actually puts his shopping cart away and like stuff like that. Like I mean, obviously freedom is great, but here's the thing, this is private property or even public property. So you don't have the right, think about like in Ancapistan where like an ANCAP will shoot you for like going onto his property, So, you don't have the right to deface people's stuff that you didn't pay for. So now you could be like, well, high fines and caning, that's too much. Well, if you don't do it, you don't have to worry about it. Like that's why no one commits crime in Singapore. Like, do you know why we have rioting all the time in America? It's because we tolerate it.
Yeah.
We let people rioting and then we make excuses for them when they're rioting. And as they're burning people's businesses down and murdering people in cold blood, we just shrug our shoulders like, oh, they have a point. That Foot Locker had it coming. But it's dumb. In Singapore, they don't tolerate that crap and they don't have it. They have they're actually Singapore. If you look at their demographics, they're like one of the most diverse countries in the world, but they manage that. They basically, because they charge you with sedition if you try to start any trouble, and they beat your ass with bamboo, they don't have any issues. It's magical. It's like if you don't tolerate crime and bullshit, the crime and bullshit doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, they have the freest economy in the world. They're number one in the world in economic freedom. So you can have that balance of basically not tolerating people's bullshit and otherwise leaving people alone. Like, just don't try to pull any crap, and we don't care what you do after that.
It's probably
like a contradiction.
No, it doesn't. It's probably like a part of their culture too. Like at this, people probably generally don't disobey those rules, right? Not only because they don't want to get caned and fined, but because after you've done it, like it's probably a little bit conformist, like Japan is.
Well,
like everyone just has an expectation.
You don't have to live there. It's like
no, you don't. No, I think they're just. I guess he was just pointing out a fun fact about the littering thing with the gum.
Well, a lot of libertarians don't like Singapore because they're not pro free speech. They don't they will charge you with sedition if you're spreading class warfare, race warfare, religious warfare. And so you have a lot of people who are like libertarian absolutists who they think that like everybody has to have total freedom to do anything they want, even if it hurts people, because that's their freedom to do so. And they should be able to spread communism if they want. And I look at them like, shut up. Like it's like if you want to cure people of their diseases, then the virus has to die. And you could be like, well, TFM, you're a doctor and you say you want to save people's lives, but you're killing the virus. So how can you really say you're on the side of life when you're killing living things? It's like, shut up. Like this, you're stupid. I'm not having this conversation with you. I have to kill the virus so the patient doesn't die. You idiot. Like you can't be neutral about, oh, well, the life of the virus is equal to the life of the patient. No, it isn't. And if the person dies, the virus dies too. It's like with cancer. Your cancer cells are part of you. If you die, your cancer cells die because they're part of you. So they're not equivalent. You have to cut the cancer out. You have to cure the disease. Otherwise, the patient dies, and you just spread. And also, if you don't cure the disease, the virus spreads, and more people die. So the only way to, if you are on the side of life, you have to get rid of the virus. You're like, oh, but what about the life of the virus? Fuck the virus. We're on the side of life by killing the virus is killing people. That's why we have to get rid of the virus. Like, oh, you're a hypocrite, TFM. And those people just need like, shut up. Shut the fuck up. I'm not talking to you anymore. So it's like, oh, you TFM, you say you're for freedom, but you're not letting communists spread communism. So how can you say you're for freedom? It's like,
right. It's like being for open borders while also being concerned like that people who come you're it's like being for open borders as a libertarian, but which ultimately leads to letting people in that are going to vote against libertarianism. Like,
just go there for welfare. But it's like these people who they don't think about it's like they're so married to their principles, they don't think about what would actually happen if they did that. Like I'm all for, we can have open borders, but we can't have open borders and a welfare
state. Yeah.
We can't have free healthcare and a welfare state where I'm paying for your disability and I'm paying for all your healthcare after you destroy your body with drugs. So if you're responsible, like you could do all the drugs once I'm not paying for your healthcare. Once I'm not responsible for you, do all the drugs, please. But as long as I'm being forced to be responsible for your healthcare and I'm going to be paying your disability after you wreck your body, then unfortunately, you've now put me in a position where I now have an opinion about what you do to your body. And I don't want to be in that position. You put me in that position when you reach into my wallet. So as soon as you get your hand out of my pants, then you can put me out of this position, and I don't give a shit what you do with your body. But as long as I'm in the position of paying for you, I now have an opinion about what you do to your body. So it's like there are some libertarians, and these are usually younger guys who just are kind of stupid, and a lot of them are like what are called the libertarian left. They're basically just really, really stupid, and they don't think about like how the world works. They're just like, yo, man, I want freedom and equality. It's like, well, you can't, man, because that's not how the world works. Like, oh, you're a fascist. I'm like, here's a helicopter ride. That's it's dumb. And again, going back to the thing we're talking about, there's no point. Like, time is short. I'm not trying to wake these people up and red pill them. They're kind of a lost cause. I'm trying to save the lives of as many people who love freedom, true Americans, as possible. Because the good news is as long as we don't die, we can come back. We can rebuild. It's not the end of the world, but we have to not die. We have to live long enough to rebuild. So that's my goal. That's really that's what I'm focused on these days. But I'm also focusing on, kind of mental and spiritual liberation. Like, you've avoided me too. You've avoided communism. What's next? So the next step,
preparing for the next thing.
Liberation. Get on that. Got that enlightenment.
Yeah, I want to say something about that. I'm going to read the rest of these super chats because I keep getting them. I appreciate it. Jackie Chun gives us $5 USD and says, the problem is in the free economies, money rules, meaning a few 100 rich people rule. Every society has rulers. In liberal states, that's how it is. I disagree with that a little bit. I think that if your society is only materialist, and it is then you're going to have that where it's all about the money. But I think that one of the reasons, and I'm not saying that because again, I'm not a religious guy, but I do believe that one of the reasons why something akin to a kind of spiritual movement or access, or you could say religion, as long as it doesn't get become authoritarian. If you marry that with a free market, you can basically create a way in which people can be satisfied in their personal life. So they're not always looking at what that other guy has, because that's when you get into this problem. Now, there'll always be people like that, but you can probably temper or, keep that in line to some degree. Because the thing is, like, just having a free market capitalist materialist system, while I do think that capitalism is the best way to conduct trade, people have to have more. Like because the material world is not enough. They need more so that they can be satisfied with, more than simply what they have in their possession.
And the whole like blaming the rich, that's just, you either Don't know what you're talking about. You're just parroting stuff that some leftist told you.
Yeah, money
Or
makes the world go
you're
round, and that.
yeah,
Yeah,
you're talking shit. The rich aren't the bad guys, and I'll prove it right now. The rich billionaires, they're all building bunkers in like Cyprus and New Zealand. You can look it up. Now, if these were the secret rulers of Western civilization, why are they building bunkers in other parts of the world that are basically unconnected to the countries they supposedly rule in? Like, think about it. Like, it doesn't even make sense. Like, do you see the Clintons building bunkers in Cyprus and New Zealand? No, because they're the ones in charge, not the Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. They're not the power behind the throne. But people, they want to, they see the world in the way they see it, and they
yeah,
cherry
yeah.
pick and they see things the way
Yeah.
they are. It's fine.
It's
It
funny
is what
because
it is.
they think that greed is something that only happens through capitalism. Like there aren't greedy people that are
Well,
psychopathic and power hungry and under any system.
Well, it works both ways. So yeah,
Yeah.
you have rich people who feel superior to the average man, and they flex on them, and they show off their money, and they feel that they're better than everyone because they have money. But then you have people at the bottom who, through envy and resentment, they look up at the rich people and they think they're the superior ones.
Hmm.
So
But they're
it's just
morally better because they're poor.
yeah, it's called herd morality or slave morality, as Nietzsche described it. And look, it's whatever. Again, I don't. If you really hate rich people and you think capitalism is evil, then you don't even listen. Everything I just said about not dying, it was all a big goof. I want you to go fight that civil war, comrade. Good
Yeah.
luck.
DJ Yassi gives us $2 Australian, says on iOS, Spinster and Gab are banned. Kinda ironic. So they're both banned. DJ Yassi gives us $2 Australian and says plenty of alt-right people on Mastodon. Brace yourself. Well, not in this specific group though.
Yeah, not in PayPig. So yeah, so there's different tabs. There's the home tab, notifications tab, the local tab, and then the federated tab. So if you just go to the local and whatever, that's going to be PayPig only. But if you go to federated, that's when you've opened up the floodgates. So yeah, there are some spicy servers. There's even some lolicon servers. So when you go on the federated tab, be prepared to mute a lot of lolicon.
Watch yourself.
Yeah, you got to brace yourself. You got to gird your loins, because there's going to be some very offensive stuff. Because it's like a free speech platform. So if
Wild West,
you're going to spend like 5 to 10 minutes muting channels that are posting like weird porn and offensive things. But once you get through it, it's fine. But if you just be prepared to spend about 10 minutes muting stuff that's offensive. Like, no, you don't have to, you're not going to block them. You're not going to report them. You just mute them. You just click them, right click, mute. And basically it removes them from your feed and you'll never see them again. That's how adults handle their business. They don't like, you offended me, or make it go away.
Yeah, it's basically like let them have their weird whatever and you just get on with your business.
You go jerk off with your cartoons over there. I'm going to be over here.
Right. DJ Yassi, this is the last super chat. Try not to send any more, guys, because I'm not going to read them. DJ Yassi gives us $5 Australian and says it's important to distinguish the political elite from the financial elite. One of them is just rich, and the others are the ones that run the show. Well, power is actually more addictive than resources. When you can only make so much money before you're just like, yeah, I don't really know what I'm going to do with this. But when you have power, that's like 10 times the strength of cocaine. Like, you don't need money if you have power. That's the thing.
If you want to understand how the system works, instead of reading like random alt-right stuff about bankers, you should read Mencius Moldbug. Now he's an absolutist. So if you're an absolutist,
I know who he is. Yeah.
Yeah. So he wrote Letter to Open-Minded Progressive, where he talks about the cathedral. So this is more of the neo-reactionaries are like another group in the absolutists are very. It's like medieval Europe. It's like a bunch of petty kingdoms. So there's like the fascists, the monarchists, and then there's the neo-reactionaries. So they're a good bunch. They're actually very well read and very educated. So they're fine. They're at least rational. But they understand the problem. Like if you want to talk to someone who knows what they're talking about and can actually explain it rationally and cite their sources, Mentions Molbug and other neo-reactionaries, they'll tell you what's up. Now, I disagree with their solutions because I'm not an absolutist, but they diagnose the problem very well. And the problem, the progressive cathedral isn't the rich. It's much more complicated than that. It's a combination of the political elites, the media, academia, um, just like a lot, basically people. And the reason why that exists is because it's a democracy. So the way you get power in a democracy is you get 51% of the people to vote for you. Well, that's why the media is so important. In countries where there's no democracy, no one gives a crap about the media, but the media is important in a democracy because most people do what the media says. So controlling the media is very important, which is why the censorship on social media is so important, because the left has to maintain their stranglehold on the communications so that they can establish their viewpoint as the dominant viewpoint. Because most people are NPCs. They don't think for themselves. They just do what everyone else around them is doing because they want to fit in. So as long as the left controls the narrative on the mainstream media and social media, the average NPC will just copy that narrative because they want to fit in and they don't want to stick out and be ostracized. So that's the cathedral. So it's not just rich people. It's the whole institution, which includes not just the news and regular media. It includes academia, the colleges, it includes the government. It's the whole thing. And you saw this in 2020. Trump actually challenged the cathedral, and look what they did to him. And it wasn't just if it was just the Democratic Party, then so what? But like, look what they kicked him off of Twitter. And then when the January 6th incident happened, they kicked off tens of thousands of accounts. Like you saw, like that's the power of the cathedral. And that wasn't Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk. These aren't just rich people. This is and also the people behind the scenes in these media companies and in these social media companies. They're not rich. They're not billionaires. They're just like the people at Google. They're not, multimillionaire people. They're just like regular workers and regular people. Like I used to work when I was in military intelligence, and then I worked at NSA for a while. And the people there, they're just regular schlubs doing their job. But they're the ones who like basically fuck your world up. But they're just doing it because it's all one big incestuous organism of people just trying to keep themselves in power.
Yeah, they're like they're motivated by a unified will more than like like meeting in secret with robes and torches. Like it looks like they're all working together, but they're just moving in the same direction.
Yeah, well, it's like a school of fish. They're not like a hive mind. There's no one controlling them, but they're just moving together. So it creates the appearance of like some type of higher structure. But you have people who share values. Like it's really all about values. Like you're talking about religion a moment ago. So what I recommend doing is find a religion or a community or a culture that aligns with your values. And that's how I discovered Taoism and Buddhism. Because I was raised Christian. But Christianity teaches, what Nietzsche called herd morality, and I agree with him. So the values of Christianity don't align with my values, whereas Taoism and Buddhism do align with my values. So I just switched. I mean, they're not literally true either way. It's more about, here's the thing, you're going to have religion in your society because people want to know what happens after you die. So you can't just not have religion because then someone's going to put religion in your society anyway. And that religion they put there may not align with your values. So better to have a religion that already aligns with your values. Because if you have a religion that aligns with your values, then it's so much easier because then your government and your religions aren't fighting each other. Like that's what the founding fathers had to deal with. So Christianity has been the dominant religion in the West since Constantine. And so the founding fathers tried to create a secular government where there's separate church and state and all that, a la the Enlightenment. But they were always fighting against the tide of Christianity because Christianity and the government they're trying to build that had separation, which is based more on the Roman Republic than anything. They weren't swimming together. They were opposing. And then eventually via the social gospel movement and progressivism, honestly, Christians, not necessarily traditional conservative Christians, but like progressive Christians, they're able to sweep God under the carpet and get their religion put into the government. And that's really what put the fuel on the fire of the progressive movement, was when they were able to infiltrate the government and get around the separation of church and state. But that was inevitable. The founding fathers did what they could, but it only lasted like 100 or so years before the progressives got their way into government. And then it was over. So it's, again, it's not a mistake if you learn from it. So the founding fathers made some mistakes. Singapore made some mistakes. Like they banned class warfare, religious warfare, race warfare, but not gender warfare. Big mistake. So, we're going to 2 steps back, 1 step forward. We're going to get there eventually. We're going to learn from the mistakes of the past, and we're going to build back better. But for realsies this time, not like the Joe Biden way, but we're going to actually build America. We're going to make it great again. It's going to be huge.
Triggered.
We're going to have Terminator waifus with machine guns. It's going to be great.
Well, it's about time. All right. And then last super chat, DJ Yassi gives us $5 Australian and says, it's important to distinguish the political elite from the financial elite. One of them, I already read that one, didn't I?
Yeah, you already read that one.
I think that was the last. I feel like there was another one. I just need to double check. Yeah, okay, there was. No, that was it. Okay, that's all the super chats. All right, so one more thing I want to get your thoughts on. So what I've been doing or haven't had an interest in lately a lot is discussing masculinity in a kind of symbolic way, like in stories and in sort of like great old narratives and such, because I think that when I think about like all of let's set aside the end of the United States for a second. When I think about all of the stuff going on in with like the popularity of people like Jordan Peterson, and there's all these like groups that are sort of like coming up, like these masculine or male oriented fraternities, like the liminal order that Jack Murphy's put together, and like a lot of these other groups. There's a lot of male fraternities coming up, making a big comeback. A lot of men gathering with younger men and such. I know that that's something that it's despite whether or not too little too late, whatever, but what I'm wondering about is what I've been talking about a lot lately and thinking about is I think that one of the best ways for us to sort of communicate wisdom to each other, which is something that you're trying to do with your channel, such as it is, and in this discussion we're having right now, is through stories. And it seems that stories are the thing that is the most effective because they're usually easy to communicate. They there is a lesson embedded in them, and it's you can like repeat them to other people, right? That's why we have things like mythology, and I think that's what Christianity is sort of like based on. Like it's all a bunch of the Bible is nothing but stories that are passing on wisdom. So I've spoken to multiple people who are writers and are they talk about symbolism and stories and such. And I was wondering, because the thing is, like, if you look at our popular culture now, it's garbage, right? Like, movies are trash, books are trash. Like, no one knows what they're doing. They're just cramming their politics into everything, and nobody likes it. I mean, it's shallow garbage most of the time. And I think the reason is because the people creating these things they have completely lost the connection to any kind of storytelling tools or any understanding of the nature of people, so they can't tell good stories. And also they're sort of ideologically possessed, right? You heard about how Jordan Peterson is basically the Red Skull now, for example. Yeah. So
based.
Yeah, I know. So what do you think about, have you thought much about this since you've been getting into Taoism and meditation and sort of like developing the spiritual? Because I wonder if that isn't like something that men can do, right? So
there's actually 2 Taoist texts that are full of little stories. There's the Chuangzi and the Lao-Tzu, which they're 2 Taoist sages who their books are largely allegorical stories. So there's a story from Chuangzi called 3 in the Morning, which is a guy who basically was a monkey trainer, went to his monkeys and says, okay, I'm going to give you 3 measures of chestnuts in the morning and 4 measures in the evening. And the monkeys were very displeased. And so the monkey trainer thought about, okay, I'll give you 4 measures of chestnuts in the morning and 3 in the evening. And they were well pleased with that. And that's basically the whole story. And it's like, be flexible and, it didn't change anything. He just basically he dealt with the monkeys in a way that didn't alter the actual arrangement, but made them happy. So it's a very simple story. Simple stories like that. Chongzo and Leizu are very full of those. But like honestly, the bigger story is the story that actually benefits your life. Telling little stories from Chongzo or Leizu are fine, but what I really find interesting is when you read Stoicism. Like Jordan Peterson's philosophy is basically watered down Stoicism. But
Hmm.
if you read the Meditations from Marcus Aurelius or the Enchiridion, and you see the core lessons about suffering and doing your duty and so forth,
Hmm.
and you see, and then you also in Stoicism you have the Logos, which is like the
Yeah.
universal soul. Now in Buddhism, you have the whole thing about Buddhism is about the nature of suffering, and you
Hmm.
have you have the big mind or the Buddha nature, which is the same as the Logos. And then in Taoism, you have going with nature and accepting nature as it is, and then you have the Tao, which is the universal nature of the universe. So you have Eastern philosophy, Western philosophy. Oh, and then, and then I was also Viktor Frankl and existentialism and Nietzsche also talk about this, like how suffering is the path to greatness and what doesn't kill you make you stronger, and you're using your will and so forth. So you see basically all these great men from different eras in different parts of the world. You have ancient China, ancient Rome, you have German
And at different
philosophers.
points in history too. Yeah.
You have Nietzsche, a German philosopher, and Viktor Frankl, a Jewish Holocaust survivor, basically saying the same thing, and they all kind of converge. And the message is to base is it's the art of living.
Yeah.
So stories are great. Like I love Chongzo, I love Leizu, I love the little stories in Taoist text. But at the end of the day, the doctrines of the Tao or the Buddha nature or the Logos, those are actually life changing. As fun as a good story is, like you watch like an Avengers movie
Oh
and
yeah, but
you get to see the spectacle. Like, and even if it's
yeah.
promoting good values, it's fine. But no one went to see a Marvel movie and had their life changed.
Right. No, I agree. But that's what I'm getting at though. Like, um, you mentioned Peterson and how what he's saying is essentially he's just sort of repackaging Stoicism, and and it would seem that for someone who is as well read as you are, that's kind of trite. Like, oh yeah, I know about that. But it's also the fact that he's become so popular is demonstrative of how, especially because his audience is overwhelmingly young men who are lost, and they're directionless and all this. So it shows that there's definitely a need for this, and that's why I was saying, like, the power of narrative wisdom is what I'm getting at. And you say that there are these life-changing things, and I'm that's why I think it is important. But guys need like an in, and I'm trying to help them, and I think that in
Well,
this way this can be helpful.
yeah. So what Jordan Peterson does is, so obviously Marcus Aurelius was from like 2,000 years ago. He ruled like between 100 and 200 AD. So,
Hmm.
obviously nobody's promoting his book because it isn't copyrightable. Like it's definitely public domain. So because there's no money to be made on it, no one really cares. You have like Ryan Holiday who writes some Stoic literature or whatever, but it's like nobody teaches this in school. It's not you're not going to get in the popular culture. So unless you're getting a watered down version of it, like Jordan Peterson, or whether
Hmm.
you have to go look for it yourself. So it's like one of those things where most people in the world, it's not just a men problem, it's a human problem. You don't know what you don't know unless you're naturally curious, unless you go down a rabbit hole and like find things you didn't know, you're not going to know. So people, they're looking for some answers and they find Jordan Peterson. And
Yeah.
sure, they could have gotten the same information from Epictetus or Marcus Aurelius, but they don't know who those people are. They've never heard of Marcus Aurelius or Epictetus. So they're getting their information from Jordan Peterson, which is fine, better than nothing. Like if your only knowledge of Zen Buddhism is Alan Watts, that's better than nothing. Alan Watts was very charismatic. He's got plenty of videos on YouTube. If you don't want to read the Tao Te Ching or the Chuangzi or any kind of Zen literature, that's fine. You can just listen to Alan Watts lectures, and you'll get something from it, and it's better than nothing. So there's different messengers, and this is why when back when the MGTOW community was a lot bigger and there were a lot more content creators, some people like to start drama. And this is also true of the current Manosphere. A lot of MGTOW is gone.
Yep.
It's basically been driven away because it's a hate movement, and we hate the Womans.
I thought they were
So
just out doing MGTOW shit at this point. I mean,
oh
I
yeah,
guess I don't know.
well they are, but I'm talking like so most of the content creators
Yeah, the
have
content
gone.
creators.
The
Yeah,
content creators are gone. I mean, everyone's doing their MGTOW shit, but it's like the community, the YouTube community, the Reddit community, it's basically stagnant, if not gone. What's left of the Manosphere as it is mostly like fitness channels, dating coaches, not really PUA anymore, because now the PUAs will get arrested for rape. So it's like the people who are still trying to package things. Now, I don't attack these guys. Like if you're like
sure.
if you're a fitness YouTuber, obviously I probably don't watch you because I don't have anything to get from you, but I don't resent you. I'm not going to do any takedown response videos to you, because even if I disagree with what you're selling, if you're getting people into the community, like people will, they follow a YouTuber because they want fitness advice. And then the guy, while he's telling you, hey man, you got to get up at 6 a.m. and you got to run a mile and a half and do some jumping jacks. And while you're doing that, why don't you listen to some stoicism, listen to Marcus Aurelius, or listen to, this and that, like, get some spiritual or mindfulness. You don't have to spiritualize it. The spirit and the mind are basically the same thing. So you can, if you don't want to go down the religious road, you can just make it about the mind. It's the same thing. So while you're building your body, you should also build your mind. And though while you're learning about these things, you should learn about these philosophies. And so you can use fitness and wanting to look good to get your dick wet as a way to get people on this path, the way Jordan Peterson did. Jordan Peterson's only famous because he told trannies he's not going to use their pronouns. He basically was he was a Canadian college professor who stood up against trannies. And that's why he's famous. So it could be something that silly in the grand scheme of things. But yeah,
Yep.
people are hungry for knowledge. And because the red pill and the manosphere has been censored to hell, and they don't know what they don't know. They don't know about stoicism or Zen or anything. So you can be that bridge to get them thinking about these philosophical concepts. And it could be by telling stories. It could be by inspiring them to better their minds and bodies. It could be whatever you have to do. Now, I'm not going to do that on my channel. I basically review sex toys these days. But if you're a fitness channel, or you're a whatever channel, whatever you do, if you're helping men improve their lives, good on you. And also I would encourage everyone else, read Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus. They're Western. They're not. If you're not into Eastern philosophy or Eastern religion, that's fine. You can still appreciate Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus, even if you're Christian. The Christian theologians incorporated Socrates and Marcus Aurelius. They even identified the Logos with Jesus. So don't let your Christian faith get in the way of you appreciating Stoic philosophy. Because they're
Yeah.
not necessarily incompatible. But look into philosophy, better your mind as well as your body, and then because having knowledge allows you to basically live a better life. It really is the art of living. That's what really philosophy should do. It should teach you how to live a good life. So obviously your freedom's important. Not going to divorce court, not getting Me Too'd, very important. Not dying in a concentration camp, equally important. But at the end of the day, let's say you avoid all those things. You avoid Me Too. You avoid all the horrible things communism may or may not do to you. But you still have to live a good life. So, and what's interesting, you look at Epictetus, he was a slave. So he was he's probably the biggest Stoic philosopher, and he was a slave. Then you have Marcus Aurelius, who was the emperor of Rome. So two Stoic philosophers who couldn't be you can't get more distant than a slave and the emperor of Rome, and yet they both followed the same school of philosophy.
Yep. All right. Well, that's basically all I wanted to hear. And we've gone for almost 3 hours, so I'm gonna wrap it up here. Do you have any final thoughts before I close it out? I appreciate you coming on, and I thought it was a good discussion.
I mean, you already posted my stuff. I'm basically
Yeah.
on alt tech, MGTOW. Check me out on Mastodon. I have some books on Amazon. Now obviously my YouTube channel, I do review sex toys. I have a sex doll waifu. If that bothers you, it's cool. No hard feelings. So It is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Everyone.
Well, nonetheless, check him out. And yeah, thanks so much for coming on. Thank you guys for coming on. I got the recommendation to get you on came from one of our followers. So I do want to say thanks. And I have been, aware of Turd Flinging Monkey for a long time. I've been watching his videos on and off, but I hadn't seen him around, so I didn't know that he was still doing content.
Yeah, I got kicked off. I got yeeted a long time ago. So
yeah.
I've been kicked off of Twitch, Stream.me, DLive. That just happened after the 6th. I got kicked off of DLive. I got kicked off of Discord, PayPal. Yeah. So right now I'm on MGTOW, PureTube, Entropy, Prohibited.tv, and Odyssey.
Oh, well, Odysseys. There you go. I have to check them out. There's so many new things popping up. I can't keep up. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on this episode of the Fireside Chat. Thank you, Turd Flinging Monkey, for joining me. And we will talk to you guys in the next one. Before we go, please like, share, subscribe, comment, and hit the bell for notifications. If you're on YouTube, otherwise follow us on all the other places that we are currently streaming to. And I think we'll be streaming to more places, actually, because I just got a good tip from TFM just before the show started. So thank you guys so much for coming on the show, and we'll talk to you in the next video. Goodbye. Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.